Starting off with Street Fighter 6 and Lights Out Radio. It's gonna be live.
The beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191. The known universe is ruled by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, my father. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. The Spacing Guild and its navigators, who the spice has mutated over 4,000 years, use the orange spice gas, which gives them the ability to fold space. That is, travel to any part of the universe without moving. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. A desolate, dry planet with vast deserts. Hidden away within the rocks of these deserts are a people known as the Fremen, who have long held a prophecy that a man would come, a Messiah, who would lead them to true freedom. The planet is Arrakis, also known as June.
Greetings, children. It is I, your obedient servant, Sebastian St. Smalls. Killing me, Smalls, Vincent twice. You can always call me Bennett. Begin by simply listening, slow down, see just how peaceful today can be. Hey there. So the plan for this one, like I said, is Street Fighter 6, Lights Out Radio. We'll see how it all goes. We shall see. Penetrated the zone. Oh, I guess I can go over here. Here. Lights out. Poltergeist.
However little known the feelings or views of
Body.
such a man may be on his first entry the neighborhood. This truth is sacred. And it is right.
This is Arch Obler bringing you another in our series of stories of the unusual. And once again we caution you, these lights out stories are definitely not for the timid soul. We tell you calmly and very sincerely, if you're frightened easily, turn off your radio now. But if you're fascinated by the mysterious, the fantastic, the unearthly, then anticipate chills in our story of Poltergeist.
Jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, that was swell. Now let's go to town. St. Louis woman with her diamond ring, kicking that man around.
No, stop that, Kay.
What's the matter? Am I scaring the horse?
Oh, it seems like a sacrilege singing a song like that out here. This beautiful, clean snow and blue sky.
Well, what's wrong with a hot song to keep us warm? If you think the St. Louis blues is going to dirty up the snow, you ought to hear Frankie and Johnny the way I sing it.
Oh, stop it, Kay. You're not funny at all. Why can't you enjoy the fresh air without that cabaret sort of thing?
Oh, just an old-fashioned gal, eh, Florence? How about you, Edna? Don't you like my songs either? You haven't said anything for the last 5 minutes.
Well, I haven't been listening to you, to tell the truth. I love to watch the snow sort of flow along under the sleigh.
When you say that, gal, smile. Gosh, did you ever see more snow in your life?
The man at the hotel said it had been snowing on and off up here for 2 weeks.
I think coming out here to the country is the best thing we three have done since we started rooming together. Hiking in the snow is terribly healthy.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. The healthier I get, the worse I feel.
Crazy idiot.
She does say the funniest things, doesn't she? I always say that Kay ought to...
Whoa!
Hallelujah, we're here. Is this as far as we go, driver?
That's right, miss. Can't go no further down this road account of the drift.
Oh, my goodness. The drifts are too deep for a horse. How can we walk through them?
I second the motion.
Well, you young ladies don't have to worry none so long as you keep going down the valley over there. Snow ain't piled up that way all the way to Ma Jenkins.
Oh, well, that's marvelous. Come on, girls. Let's get started.
So long. Take care of yourselves, girls.
Come on, Edna.
Goodbye, Miss Gal. Listen to the snow talking at us.
Very dry snow. Our feet rub particles of it together, and the friction makes a sound.
Kind of scary, isn't it?
Why?
Oh, I don't know. It's just as if the snow was sort of trying to talk to us. I mean, as if it was angry at our trespassing.
Hey, don't tell me we're trespassing. I don't want any country squire taking any pot shots at my constitutional amendment with rock salt. No, thank you.
Oh, don't talk nonsense, Kay. We're not trespassing. Why, this path through the valley here over to Mrs. Jenkins' house is the favorite hike of everyone who comes up this way during the winter.
What's Mrs. Jenkins got anyway that makes people walk their feet off?
Wait till you taste her cooking.
Eat. Oh, boy, let's go.
It's awfully quiet out here, isn't it?
Oh, that's the glory of it. I've had the roar of the subway in my ears so long. Okay, don't walk so fast.
Come on, look what I found.
Oh, come on, Edna.
Oh, please. Let me take your arm. I'm getting out of breath.
Well, take it easy. There's no hurry. Well, what is it, Kay?
Look, through the circle of trees here. Look what I discovered.
Well, isn't that interesting? It's a sort of a natural amphitheater.
Sure. Say, who is this guy, Daniel Boone?
What's an amphitheater?
Well, that means an oval surfing place with rising tiers of seats. It's, like that place we went to for the horse show.
Oh.
Back in the times of the Greeks, they had outdoor theaters.
Listen to the
They made
professor.
use of places just like this, where the ground sloped up and made a sort of a natural arena or stage below.
Theater. That's an idea. Sit down, gals, and I'll give you a special performance of the K Follies.
It's awful snowy here, isn't it?
I'll trample it down with my string band. Welcome, sweet thing.
You're not dancing in the snow. If I had that girl's energy.
She's really graceful, isn't she? I'll bet if she went on the stage,
Kay!
she fell.
Kay, did you hurt yourself?
Oh, did I land on my dignity? Here, give me a hand.
Here, I'll help you. There you are.
Oh, did I take a flop?
Did you hurt yourself badly?
I'll live. What in the world did I trip over? Oh, no wonder. Look at that rock under the snow. No wonder I did a nosedive.
Oh, my goodness. There are rocks like that all over. A person could break their neck if they...
Girls,
What's the matter?
What is it?
Kay, the rock you tripped over. It's not a rock.
What are you talking about? Of course it's a rock.
Yes, but it's something more than that. It's a tombstone.
Tombstone? Oh, no, it can't be.
Look for yourself. It says, "Here lies buried the remains of one who, reckless in life..."
Stop. Don't read anymore. Stop.
And all these other stones laying flat on the ground.
Is there tombstones too? Yes.
Ooh, what a place to picture dance.
What's the matter, Edna?
What did you scream for?
You danced on the grave.
What?
You danced on the grave. I saw you do it. You danced on the grave. Okay.
Edna, stop it. Stop
Oh,
it.
what's come into her? Edna, stop acting
Edna,
like
stop,
that.
for heaven's sake. Control yourself.
Okay. I'm so sorry for you. You danced on a grave.
For heaven's sake, stop talking like that. Sure, I danced on a
Well,
grave.
yes, of course she did. It was perfectly accidental.
And what if it wasn't? What of it?
You pulled a gun.
The what?
Edna Hanson, what are you talking about? What's that word you just used?
Poltergeist. Okay, what have you done?
You superstitious little fool. If you don't stop talking that way, I'm going to slap your face. What's the matter with you? I didn't do anything.
You walked on the grave. You danced on the grave.
Edna, be sensible. We all walked on graves, but it was purely accidental.
Yeah.
We had no intention of desecrating them.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The poltergeist. He'll come. I know he will.
Oh, what the use? She's crazy.
Edna, what are you talking about? What's a poltergeist? What are you so frightened about?
My father, he told me, if you walk on a grave, if you dance on a grave, the poltergeist.
Poltergeist what? What is a
An
poltergeist?
evil spirit. It comes out of the grave. It kills and destroys. It'll kill us. It'll kill us all.
Stop it.
It's roasting.
Oh,
Stop it.
please.
Lay off that way,
Edna!
But it won't get me. Edna, come back here.
She's gone insane. I'll get her.
Okay, catch her. Edna, don't run away. Nothing will hurt you. Nothing. Oh, Edna, look out. Hey, what happened? That stone. It hit Edna.
Edna, open your eyes.
Blood all over her face. Kay, who threw that stone? Who threw it?
I don't know. It came from the graveyard.
Now, girls, take it easy. Take it easy.
Doctor, she won't die. Tell me she won't die.
Oh, no, of course not.
And you're sure that his skull isn't fractured?
Oh, absolutely not. Maybe a little concussion, that's all.
It's almost 5. Our train. Can we get someone to help us carry her down to the station so we can get her on board?
Bored? I'm telling you, that little friend of yours shouldn't be moved out of bed for a week. If you do, well, it might be just too bad.
Oh, Flo, what'll we do? You go home, Kay. I'll stay with her. Oh, no, you won't. I'm not leaving you here alone in this godforsaken place. If you stay, I stay too. Kay, please be sensible. Why should we all lose our jobs when you
If
can...
you'll excuse me, you ladies, I've got to be on my way.
Oh, yes, of course, Doctor. Is there anything more you can do for Edna, Doctor? Any medicine or something?
Nope, I've done all I can do. She's sleeping comfortable now. Miss,
Yes, Doctor.
the constable's sick too, you know, and he's sort of depending on me to keep things straight. Now, just how did you say that little friend of yours got hurt?
Well, it was just the way we explained, Doctor. That rock came flying and...
Yes, I know, but who threw the rock?
We don't know.
What?
That's true, Doctor. We don't know.
But somebody threw it. You can't change facts. Somebody threw the rock that cracked her head.
For heaven's sakes, old man, you don't think we did it?
No, miss, I didn't.
Decided. Doctor, you've got to believe us. It happened just the way we said. All at once, that rock came flying through the air from the direction of the graveyard. It struck Edna, and we just didn't see who threw it.
All right, if that's your story. Well, you better stay in your rooms here. I mean, you better not be leaving until the constable's on his feet and has a chance to talk with you. I'll be back in a few hours and see how the girl is.
He doesn't believe us.
What difference does it make? We know what we saw.
But what did we see?
She was running. She fell.
Kay,
Well,
let's not fool ourselves. There was no one there to throw that rock.
there must have been.
There wasn't.
Stop saying that.
Aren't you brave enough to face facts? There wasn't any place for anyone to hide. I saw that stone. It seemed to come down out of the air. So slowly.
Florence, if you don't stop talking like
I
that...
remember what...
It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a fortune. However, first entry in neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the mind that he is
A beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10. A beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191. The known universe is ruled by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV, my father. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. The Spacing Guild and its navigators, who the spice has mutated over 4,000 years, use the orange spice gas, which gives them the ability to fold space. That is, travel to any part of the universe without moving. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. A desolate, dry planet with vast deserts. Hidden away within the rocks of these deserts are a people known as the Fremen, who have long held a prophecy that a man would come, a Messiah, who would lead them to true freedom. The planet is Arrakis, also known as June.
Welcome back. I'm Christina, the manager of the Pacific Beach Library. Thank you for joining me for day 12 of our read-along together of, ready, let's go for it, Dracula by Bram Stoker. And so, let's see, today for tea, I did decide to take the plunge. I'm going to finish off that other tea. So today is the last of our Earl Grey de la Creme. But I have fancy new teas to try tomorrow, so we'll experiment with those. And let's see. This smells so good. You've heard me talk about this tea a lot if you've been reading with me for a while. Hello, good to see you. Out of curiosity, for anyone who's here today, are you drinking anything fun? Also, are you reading anything fun outside of Dracula? I always like to see what folks are reading. I get good ideas from it. Not that I don't already have a huge pile of books at home to read, but you know how it is. You can always have more books to read. That's delicious. And more teas to drink. Alright, so let's talk a little bit before we get into the reading. I posted a poll yesterday afternoon. So far, as of right before we went into today's reading, I looked at the poll results. 8 people had voted that they wanted us to just do the live readings, so that means we would only post readings Monday through Thursday, and no one had voted for the option of having a taped reading on Friday. So I'm just going to call it right now. I figure we've got our decision made. So I'm just going to go ahead and after this week, I'm going to just do the readings Monday through Thursday. This week, I'm going to do one last Friday reading, and the reason is that it just works out with the timing, with the number of chapters that we have, that if we do a reading this Friday and then only Monday through Thursday for the rest of the readings, we will finish up on Thursday, October 29th, which means by Halloween, we will have the conclusion of our tale of Dracula. And then we can make a decision too if we want to maybe have a little party, either the following Monday or perhaps on Halloween itself. So we'll figure that out later. But for now, the decision has been made. We're going to go ahead and just do the live streams, and our last live stream will be this Friday. Our last Friday live stream will be this Friday, and then we'll keep going after that with just Monday through Thursday readings together. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about what happened in yesterday's chapter of Dracula. Yesterday in chapter 11, it was really good. It started out with Lucy Westenra talking about how, fortunate she felt that all these folks were taking care of her. And then Dr. Van Helsing was saying, he was quite smug because he knew that he had left Lucy Westenra surrounded by garlic blossoms and that there was no way that any unwanted visitors of the vampiric sort would be able to enter her room. And when he arrives at the house, again, he's quite happy. Neither he nor Dr. Seward stayed the night because Dr. Van Helsing was so confident that Lucy would be fine. And when they go in there, they run into Lucy's mother, who says, "Oh yes, she's sleeping like an angel. She's not disturbed at all. She's just so calm." And he's like, "Wow, that's great." Because, he's like patting himself on the back, like, "It's because of my wonderful garlic." And then she continues, "Well, it's not all you. I also helped her. I noticed you had these stinky garlic flowers even on her, and so I took them off of her, and I opened the windows, and I aired out the room so she wouldn't get suffocated by the garlic." It's like,
but the Emperor
no! He didn't want to say anything directly to her because we know that Mrs. Westenra has, she's in poor health and she doesn't need a shock. But of course, when he goes in, he sees that Lucy has, lost more blood in the night, that Dracula did come in. And so he actually, this time, he gives a blood transfusion. So Dr. Van Helsing is the blood donor this time to try to revive Lucy Westenra. After that, there's, the doctor continues to watch over her to make sure that she has the necessary garlic. He warns her mother specifically that, this is part of her treatment. Even if it stinks a little bit, you just need to keep it there. And Lucy is actually really pleased. She's saying how, she seems to be doing so well. She is, she's finally even gotten used to the smell of garlic. She's so happy. She's so healthy. She's so grateful for Dr. Van Helsing and his kind care for her. And then, so that was on the night of the 17th of September. What's interesting after that is that there is a snippet mixed in next from the Pall Mall Gazette, which is a newspaper where the reporter talks with a zookeeper. Now, I'm also going to throw in here, too, a little bit of just my own commentary. I do not understand. Maybe this is how they used to do news reports back in the late 1800s. But I cannot believe that there was any news reporter that's actually printing in the dialect of this zookeeper. And as many quotes as he's giving this man about the jokes he tells and about the bribery that he's taking to speak with the reporter and all this kind of stuff. Like, if that's actually the newspaper, I need to read more news reports from the 1890s because this stuff is fun.
We must mine the spice as soon as possible.
But perhaps, who knows? In this book, though, with the report from the Pall Mall Gazette, it has a wonderfully colorful account from the zookeeper talking about this wolf that he has there at the zoo, and this strange man, Dracula, who pets the wolf's ears and, kind of weirds out the zookeeper, but the wolf seems okay with it. And then the wolf, he hears a bunch of howling that night, and the wolf takes off. The wolf eventually comes back the next day, on the 18th, and they see that the wolf has glass mixed into the fur on his head because he appears to have, gone through, somehow encountered some broken glass. And so the zookeeper takes back the wolf, and the The reporter celebrates that the community need not be afraid any longer. There's a wolf on the prowl. Then we go back. So that published on the 18th. What we find out then is that going back to the 17th, Dr. Seward mentions how he is grateful not to have to go to visit Lucy Westenra's house that night. He's very tired yet again.
My son,
he is, you know, he's
must
given
mind
blood,
the
he's
spice
watched
as soon
over
as
her, he's
possible,
tired.
or the
Also,
emperor
that
will
evening,
follow
his
us.
strange patient, Renfield, comes in and stabs him, or strikes him,
We've spotted
and he
3 troops of
causes
Fremen
blood
around
to
the
drip
house.
from Dr. Seward's
Sent
wrist
Gurney
onto the
Halleck
ground.
to meet them.
He bandages up his wrist, and then when he looks down, he
Go
sees
there
Renfield
and see what's
lapping up the blood like an animal, drinking it off the ground. It's disgusting. And Renfield saying, blood is life. The blood is the life. Continues then with an account of Dr. Seward noting that there had been a telegram delivered from Dr. Van Helsing to him, which was not properly directed. It didn't live with the county in which it was to be delivered, and so therefore the telegram came 22 hours late. So, being a day late, Dr. Seward had not realized he was meant to watch over Lucy that night of the 17th, so she had been unattended that evening.
I'm your mother, Jessica.
Again, Dr. Seward, terrible gatekeeper. He might be a good doctor, but he is the worst babysitter. Just terrible. Okay, that said, he rushes then over to visit to check on Lucy Westenra, and he's saying that he's worried about having received this he's worried about receiving this telegram, and so he is he's going to continue his journal entry once he gets to Lucy. The next thing we see, the last thing we see in that chapter, is actually a journal entry from Lucy Westenra herself. She writes a note saying how basically she is sure that she is weak and that she's dying and that she may not even make it till morning, and that she is very disturbed because even though she's been sleeping so soundly and so without fear, she has woken up to hear again the sounds of like a bat or something flapping outside of her window, a bat or a bird flapping. And again, we know it's Dracula. And she's quite disturbed and she's trying to rest. She looks out the window, she sees nothing but a big bat. And then her mother comes in to see her very ill mother. And the mother comes in and decides to lie in the bed with Lucy. And she's also disturbed by this noise, the flapping outside, but Lucy tries to reassure her. Suddenly, the window smashes apart when a wolf, the wolf that Dracula had compelled to leave the zoo, rushes in, breaks the glass, and then the mother is so disturbed she reaches for things and she pulls the garlic flower, the floral wreath off of Lucy, which again is making her vulnerable to the vampire. It all just goes down from there. The mother ends up passing out from the shock. She dies. Lucy is, gets confused by what's happening, and we can presume that Dracula is coming in. The mother dies. The maids come in because they hear the noise, and they're all disturbed about what's going on. She sends the maids down to each have a glass of wine, like to restore them because they've had such a shock upon finding the mother there. And then this is where it gets weird too. When Lucy goes down to see why aren't the maids coming back, she sees that the laudanum that the mother normally takes, which is a what's the word for that? A sedative. That the laudanum apparently has been mixed into the wine by someone, and that the maids are all drugged, and so they're passed out. She's basically alone in the house. The servants are passed out. They've been drugged. Her dead mother is in bed with her. She feels weak and tired. So again, Dracula's already sucked some of her blood and her life force out of her again. And she is just thoroughly disturbed. She is afraid that she's not going to make it till morning. She writes this note and says, I'm going to hide the paper on my breast so that when they find it, when they find my body, they will find this note as well. And she just isn't even sure if she's going to make it till morning. So,
Jessica.
The drama. Okay, now we're going to continue with chapter 12, which begins with Dr. Seward's diary.
Are the original inhabitants of Dune.
For those of you who have not read it, maybe comment now. Decide for yourself. Do you think Lucy made it through the night, or will she be dead by the time they come?
Yes, I agree to let.
I'm trying to decide if I think she'll be dead or alive. I'm voting for still barely alive, but I don't know. put your comment if you think, what your thoughts are. Alright, let's go in and find out. Chapter 12, Dr. Seward's Diary, 18 September. I drove at once to Hillingham and arrived early. Keeping my cab at the gate, I went up the avenue alone. I knocked gently and rang as quietly as possible, for I feared to disturb Lucy or her mother, and hoped to only bring a servant to the door. After a while, finding no response, I knocked and rang again. Still no answer. I cursed the laziness of the servants that they should lie abed at such an hour, for it was now 10 o'clock, and so rang and knocked again, but more impatiently, but still without response. Hitherto I had blamed only the servants, but now a terrible fear began to assail me. Was this desolation but another link in the chain of doom which seemed drawing tight round us? Was it indeed a house of death to which I had come too late? I know that minutes, even seconds of delay might mean hours of danger to Lucy if she had had again one of those frightful relapses, and I went round the house to try if I could find by chance an entry anywhere. I could find no means of ingress. Every window and door was fastened and locked, and I returned baffled to the porch. As I did so, I heard the rapid pit-pat of a swiftly driven horse's feet. They stopped at the gate, and a few seconds later I met Van Helsing running up the avenue. When he saw me, he gasped out, "Then it was you, and just arrived. How is she? Are we too late? Did you not get my telegram?" I answered as quickly and coherently as I could that I had only got his telegram early in the morning and had not lost a minute in coming here, and that I could not make anyone in the house hear me. He paused and raised his hat as he said solemnly, "Then I fear we are too late. God's will be done." With his usual recuperative energy he went on, "Come, if there be no way open to get in, we must make one. Time is all in all to us now." We went round to the back of the house where there was a kitchen window. The professor took a small surgical saw from his case and, handing it to me, pointed to the iron bars which guarded the window. I attacked them at once and had very soon cut through 3 of them. Then with the long, thin knife, we pushed back the fastening of the sashes and opened the window. I helped the professor in and followed him. There was no one in the kitchen or in the servants' rooms, which were close at hand. We tried all the rooms as we went along, and in the dining room, dimly lit by rays of light through the shutters, found 4 servant women lying on the floor. There was no need to think them dead, for their stertorous breathing and the acrid smell of laudanum in the room left no doubt as to their condition. Van Helsing and I looked at each other, and as we moved away he said, "We can attend to them later." Then we ascended to Lucy's room. For an instant or two we paused at the door to listen, but there was no sound we could hear. With white faces and trembling hands, we opened the door gently and entered the room. How shall I describe what we saw? On the bed lay 2 women, Lucy and her mother. The latter lay farthest in, and she was covered with a white sheet, the edge of which had been blown back by the drop through the broken window, showing the drawn white face with a look of terror fixed upon it. By her side lay Lucy, with face white and still more drawn. The flowers which had been round her neck we found upon her mother's bosom, and her throat was bare, showing the 2 little wounds which we had noticed before, but looking horribly white and mangled. Without a word, the professor bent over the bed, his head almost touching poor Lucy's breast. Then he gave a quick turn of his head as of one who listened, and leaping to his feet, he cried out to me, "It is not yet too late. Quick, quick, bring the brandy." I flew downstairs and returned with it, taking care to smell and taste it, lest it too were drugged like the decanter of sherry which I found on the table. The maids were still breathing, but more restlessly, and I fancied that the narcotic was wearing off. I did not stay to make sure, but returned to Van Helsing. He rubbed the brandy, as on another occasion, on her lips and gums, and on her wrists and the palms of her hands. He said to me, "I can do this, all that can be at the present. You go wake those maids. Flick them in the face with a wet towel, and flick them hard. Make them get heat and fire and a warm bath. This poor soul is nearly as cold as that beside her. She will need be heated before we can do anything more." I went at once and found little difficulty in waking 3 of the women. The fourth was only a young girl, and the drug had evidently affected her more strongly, so I lifted her on the sofa and let her sleep. The others were dazed at first, but as remembrance came back to them, they cried and sobbed in hysterical manner. I was stern with them, however, and would not let them talk. I told them that one life was bad enough to lose, and that if they delayed, they would sacrifice Miss Lucy. So, sobbing and crying, they went about their way, half-clad as they were, and prepared fire and water. Fortunately, the kitchen and boiler fires were still alive, and there was no lack of hot water. We got a bath and carried Lucy out as she was and placed her in it. Whilst we were busy chafing her limbs, there was a knock at the hall door. One of the maids ran off, hurried on some more clothes, and opened it. Then she returned and whispered to us that there was a gentleman who had come with a message from Mr. Holmwood. I bade her simply tell him that he must wait, for we could see no one now. She went away with the message, and, engrossed with our work, I clean forgot all about him. I never saw in all my experience the professor work in such deadly earnest. I knew, as he knew, that it was a stand-up fight with death, and in a pause told him so. He answered me in a way that I did not understand, but with the sternest look that his face could wear. If that were all, I would stop here where we are now, and let her fade away into peace, for I see no light in life over her horizon. He went on with his work with, if possible, renewed and more frenzied vigor. Presently, we both began to be conscious that the heat was beginning to be of some effect. Lucy's heart beat a trifle more audibly to the stethoscope, and her lungs had a perceptible movement. Van Helsing's face almost beamed, and as we lifted her from the bath and rolled her in a hot sheet to dry her, he said to me, "The first game is ours. Check to the king." We took Lucy into another room, which had by now been prepared, and laid her in bed and forced a few drops of brandy down her throat. I noticed that Van Helsing tied a soft silk handkerchief round her neck. She was still unconscious, and quite as bad as, if not worse than, we had ever seen her. Van Helsing called in one of the women and told her to stay with her and not to take her eyes off her till we returned, and then beckoned me out of the room. "We must consult as to what is to be done," he said as we descended the stairs. In the hall, he opened the dining room door, and we passed in, he closing the door carefully behind him. The shutters had been opened, but the blinds were already down, with that obedience to the etiquette of death which the British woman of the lower classes always rigidly observes. The room was therefore dimly dark. It was, however, light enough for our purposes. Van Helsing's sternness was somewhat relieved by a look of perplexity. He was evidently torturing his mind about something, so I waited for an instant, and he spoke. "What are we to do now? Where are we to turn for help? We must have another transfusion of blood, and that soon, or that poor girl's life won't be worth an hour's purchase. You are exhausted already. I am exhausted too. I fear to trust those women, even if they would have courage to submit. What are we to do for someone who will open his veins for her? What's the matter with me, anyhow?" The voice came from the sofa across the room, and its tones brought relief and joy to my heart, for they were those of Quincy Morris. Van Helsing started angrily at the first sound, but his face softened, and a glad look came into his eyes as I cried out, "Quincy Morris!" and rushed towards him with outstretched hands. "What brought you here?" I cried as our hands met. "I guess heart is the cause." He handed me a telegram. "Have not heard from Seward for 3 days, and am terribly anxious. Cannot leave. Father still in same condition. Send me word how Lucy is. Do not delay. Holmwood." I think I came just in the nick of time. You know you have only to tell me what to do. Van Helsing strode forward and took his hand, looking him straight in the eyes as he said, "A brave man's blood is the best thing on this earth when a woman is in trouble. You're a man and no mistake. Well, the devil may work against us for all he's worth, but God sends us men when we want them." Once again we went through that ghastly operation. I have not the heart to go through with the details. Lucy had got a terrible shock, and it told on her more than before, for though plenty of blood went into her veins, her body did not respond to the treatment as well as on the other occasions. Her struggle back into life was something frightful to see and hear. However, the action of both heart and lungs improved, and Van Helsing made a subcutaneous injection of morphia, as before, and with good effect. Her fate became a profound slumber. The professor watched whilst I went downstairs with Quincy Morris and sent one of the maids to pay off one of the cabmen who were waiting. I left Quincy lying down after having a glass of wine and told the cook to get ready a good breakfast. Then a thought struck me, and I went back to the room where Lucy now was. When I came softly in, I found Van Helsing with a sheet or two of notepaper in his hand. He had evidently read it and was thinking it over as he sat with his hand to his brow. There was a look of grim satisfaction in his face, as of one who has had a doubt solved. He handed me the paper, saying only, "It dropped from Lucy's breast when we carried her to the bath." When I had read it, I stood looking at the professor, and after a pause asked him, "In God's name, what does it all mean? Was she, or is she, mad? Or what sort of horrible danger is it?" I was so bewildered that I did not know what to say more. Van Helsing put out his hand and took the paper, saying, "Do not trouble about it now. Forget it for the present. You shall know and understand it all in good time, but it will be later. And now, what is it that you came to me to say?" This brought me back to fact, and I was all myself again. "I came to speak about the certificate of death. If we do not act properly and wisely, there may be an inquest, and that paper would have to be produced. I am in hopes that we need have no inquest, for if we had, it would surely kill poor Lucy, if nothing else did. I know, and you know, and the other doctor who attended her knows, that Mrs. Westenra had disease of the heart, and we can certify that she died of it. Let us fill up the certificate at once, and I shall take it myself to the registrar and go on to the undertaker." "Good, oh my friend John. Well thought of. Truly Miss Lucy, if she be sad in the foes that beset her, is at least happy in the friends that love her. 1, 2, 3, all open their veins for her, besides one old man. Ah yes, I know. Friend John, I am not blind. I love you all the more for it. Now, go." In the hall, I met Quincy Morris with a telegram for Arthur telling him that Mrs. Westenra was dead, that Lucy also had been ill but was now going on better, and that Van Helsing and I were with her. I told him where I was going, and he hurried me out, but as I was going said, "When you come back, Jack, may I have 2 words with you all to ourselves?" I nodded in reply and went out. I found no difficulty about the registration and arranged for the local undertaker to come up in the evening to measure for the coffin and to make arrangements. When I got back, Quincy was waiting for me. I told him I would see him as soon as I knew about Lucy and went up to her room. She was still sleeping, and the professor seemingly had not moved from his seat at her side. From his putting his finger to his lips, I gathered that he expected her to wake before long and was afraid of her stalling nature. So I went down to Quincy and took him into the breakfast room where the blinds were not drawn down, and which was a little more cheerful, or rather less cheerless, than the other rooms. When we were alone, he said to me, "Jack Seward, I don't want to shove myself in anywhere where I've no right to be, but this is no ordinary case. You know I loved that girl and wanted to marry her, but although that's all past and gone, I can't help feeling anxious about her all the same. What is it that's wrong with her? The Dutchman, and a fine old fellow he is, I can see that, said that time you 2 came in the room that you must have another transfusion of blood and that both you and he were exhausted. Now I know well that you medical men speak in camera and that a man must not expect to know what they consult about in private. But this is no common matter, and whatever it is, I have done my part. Is not that so?" "That's so," I said, and he went on, "I take it that both you and Van Helsing had done already what I did today. Is not that so?" "That's so." "And I guess Art was in it too. When I saw him 4 days ago down at his own place, he looked queer. I have not seen anything pulled down so quick since I was on the pampas and had a mare that I was fond of go to grass all in one night. One of those big bats that they call vampires had got at her in the night, and what with his gorge and the vein left open, there wasn't enough blood in her to let her stand up, and I had to put a bullet through her as she lay. Jack, if you may tell me without betraying confidence, Arthur was the first, is not that so?" As he spoke, the poor fellow looked terribly anxious. He was in a torture of suspense regarding the woman he loved, and his utter ignorance of the terrible mystery which seemed to surround her intensified his pain. His very heart was bleeding, and it took all the manhood of him, and there was a royal lot of it too, to keep him from breaking down. I paused before answering, for I felt that I must not betray anything which the professor wished kept secret. But already he knew so much, and guessed so much, that there could be no reason for not answering. So I answered in the same phrase, "That's so." "And how long has this been going on?" "About 10 days. 10 days? Then I guess, Jack Seward, that poor pretty creature that we all love has had put into her veins within that time the blood of 4 strong men. Man alive, her whole body wouldn't hold it." Then coming close to me, he spoke in a fierce half-whisper. "What took it out?" I shook my head. "That," I said, "is the crux. Van Helsing is simply frantic about it, and I am at my wit's end. I can't even hazard a guess. There has been a series of little circumstances which have thrown out all our calculations as to Lucy being properly watched, but these shall not occur again. Here we stay until all be well or ill." Quincy held out his hand. "Count me in," he said. "You and the Dutchman will tell me what to do, and I'll do it." When she woke late in the afternoon, Lucy's first movement was to feel in her breast, and to my surprise, produced the paper which Van Helsing had given me to read. The careful professor had replaced it where it had come from, lest on waking she should be alarmed. Her eyes then lit on Van Helsing and on me too, and gladdened. Then she looked round the room, and seeing where she was, shuddered. She gave a loud cry and put her poor thin hands before her pale face. We both understood what was meant, that she realized to the full her mother's death. So we tried what we could to comfort her. Doubtless sympathy eased her somewhat, but she was very low in thought and spirit, and wept silently and weakly for a long time. We told her that either or both of us would now remain with her all the time, and that seemed to comfort her. Towards dusk, she fell into a doze. Here a very odd thing occurred. Whilst still asleep, she took the paper from her breast and tore it in two. Van Helsing stepped over and took the pieces from her. All the same, however, she went on with the action of tearing, as though the material were still in her hands. Finally, she lifted her hands and opened them as if scattering the fragments. Van Helsing seemed surprised, and his brows gathered as if in thought, but he said nothing. 19th September. All last night she slept fitfully, being always afraid to sleep, and something weaker when she woke from it. The professor and I took in turns to watch, and we never left her for a moment unattended. Quincy Morris said nothing about his intention, but I knew that all night long he patrolled round and round the house. When the day came, its searching light showed the ravages in poor Lucy's strength. She was hardly able to turn her head, and the little nourishment which she could take seemed to do her no good. At times she slept, and both Van Helsing and I noticed a difference in her, between sleeping and waking. Whilst asleep, she looked stronger, although more haggard, and her breathing was softer. Her open mouth showed the pale gums drawn back from the teeth, which thus looked positively longer and sharper than usual. When she woke, the softness of her eyes evidently changed the expression, for she looked her own self, although a dying one. In the afternoon, she asked for Arthur, and we telegraphed for him. Quincy went off to meet him at the station. When he arrived, it was nearly 6 o'clock, and the sun was setting full and warm, and the red light streamed in through the window and gave more color to the pale cheeks. When he saw her, Arthur was simply choking with emotion, and none of us could speak. In the hours that had passed, the fits of sleep, or the comatose condition that passed for it, had grown more frequent, so that the pauses when conversation was possible were shortened. Arthur's presence, however, seemed to act as a stimulant. She rallied a little, and spoke to him more brightly than she had done since we arrived. He too pulled himself together and spoke as cheerily as he could, so that the best was made of everything. It is now nearly 1 o'clock, and he and Van Helsing are sitting with her. I am to relieve them in a quarter of an hour, and I am entering this on Lucy's phonograph. Until 6 o'clock, they are to try to rest. I fear that tomorrow will end our watching, for the shock has been too great.
Here are the
The poor child
characteristics.
cannot rally. God help us all. Letter, Mina Harker to Lucy Westerra,
Sure, we'll do a better job.
unopened by her. 17 September. My dearest Lucy, it seems an age since I heard from you, or indeed since I wrote. You will pardon me, I know, for all my faults, when you have read all my budget of news. When I got my husband back all right, well, I got my husband back all right. When we arrived at Exeter, there was a carriage waiting for us, and in it, although he had an attack of gout, Mr. Hawkins. He took us to his house, where there were rooms for us all nice and comfortable, and we dined together. After dinner, Mr. Hawkins said, My dears, I want to drink your health and prosperity, and may every blessing attend you both. I know you both from children, and have, with love and pride, seen you grow up. Now I want you to make your home here with me. I have left to me neither chick nor child, all are gone, and in my will I have left you everything. I cried, Lucy dear, as Jonathan and the old man clasped hands. Our evening was a very, very happy one. So here we are, installed in this beautiful old house, and from both my bedroom and the drawing room I can see the great elms of the cathedral close, with their great black stems standing out against the old yellow stone of the cathedral, and I can hear the rooks overhead cawing and chattering and gossiping all day after the manner of rooks and humans. I am busy. I need not tell you, arranging things and housekeeping. Jonathan and Mr. Hawkins are busy all day, for, now that Jonathan is a partner, Mr. Hawkins wants to tell him all about the clients. How is your dear mother getting on? I wish I could run up to town for a day or two to see you, dear, but I dare not go yet, with so much on my shoulders, and Jonathan wants looking after still. He is beginning to put some flesh on his bones again, but he was terribly weakened by the long illness. Even now, he sometimes starts out of his sleep in a sudden way, and awakes all trembling until I can coax him back to his usual placidity. However, thank God, these occasions grow less frequent as the days go on, and they will in time pass away altogether, I trust. And now I have told you my news. Let me ask yours. When are you to be married, and where? And who is to perform the ceremony, and what are you to wear? And is it to be a public or a private wedding? Tell me all about it, dear. Tell me all about everything, for there is nothing which interests you which will not be dear to me. Jonathan asks me to send his respectful duty, but I do not think that is good enough from the junior partner of the important firm Hawkins and Harker. And so, as you love me, and he loves me, and I love you with all the moods and tenses of the verb, I send you simply his love instead. Goodbye, my dearest Lucy, and all blessings on you. Yours, Mina Harker. Report from Patrick Hennessy, MD, MRC SLK, QCPI, etc., etc., to John Stewart, MD. 20 September. My dear sir, in accordance with your wishes, I enclose report of the conditions of everything left in my charge. With regard to patient Renfield, there is more to say. He has had another outbreak, which might have had a dreadful ending, but which, as unfortunately happened, was unattended with any unhappy results. This afternoon, a carrier's cart with 2 men made a call at the empty house whose grounds abut on ours. The house to which, you will remember, the patient twice ran away. The men stopped at our gate to ask the porter their way, as they were strangers. I was myself looking out of the study window, having a smoke after dinner, and saw one of them come up to the house. As he passed the window of Renfield's room, the patient began to rate him from within, and called him all the foul names he could lay his tongue to. The man, who seemed a decent fellow enough, contented himself by telling him to shut up for a foul-mouthed beggar, whereupon our man accused him of robbing him and wanting to murder him, and said that he would hinder him if he were to swing for it. I opened the window and signed to the man not to notice, so he contented himself after looking the place over and making up his mind as to what kind of a place he had got to by saying, Lord bless you, sir, I wouldn't mind what was said to me in a bloomin' madhouse. I pity ye and the governor for having to live in the house with a wild beast like that. Then he asked his ways civilly enough, and I told him where the gate of the empty house was. He went away, followed by threats and curses and revilings from our man. I went down to see if I could make out any cause for his anger, since he is usually such a well-behaved man, and except his violent fits, nothing of the kind had ever occurred. I found him, to my astonishment, quite composed and most genial in his manner. I tried to get him to talk of the incident, but he blandly asked me questions as to what I meant, and led me to believe that he was completely oblivious of the affair. It was, I am sorry to say, however, only another instance of his cunning, for within half an hour I heard of him again. This time he had broken out through the window of his room and was running down the avenue. I called to the attendants to follow me and ran after him, for I feared he was intent on some mischief. My fear was justified when I saw the same cart which had passed before coming down the road, having on it some great wooden boxes. The men were wiping their foreheads and were flushed in the face, as if with violent exercise. Before I could get up to him, the patient rushed at them, and pulling one of them off the cart, began to knock his head against the ground. If I had not seized him just at that moment, I believe he would have killed the man there and then. The other fellow jumped down and struck him over the head with the butt end of his heavy whip. It was a terrible blow, but he did not seem to mind it, but seized him also and struggled with the three of us, pulling us to and fro as if we were kittens. You know I am no lightweight, and the others were both burly men. At first he was silent in his fighting, but as we began to master him and the attendants were putting a straight waistcoat on him, he began to shout, "I'll frustrate them. They shan't rob me. They shan't murder me by inches. I'll fight for my lord and master," and all sorts of similar incoherent ravings. It was with very considerable difficulty that they got him back to the house and put him in the padded room. One of the attendants, Hardy, had a finger broken. However, I set it all right, and he is going on well. The two carriers were at first loud in their threats of actions for damages, and promised to rain all the penalties of the law on us. Their threats were, however, mingled with some sort of indirect apology for the defeat of the two of them by a feeble madman. They said that if it had not been for the way their strength had been spent in carrying and raising the heavy boxes to the cart, they would have made short work of him. They gave as another reason for their defeat the extraordinary state of drought to which they had been reduced by the dusty nature of their occupation and the reprehensible distance from the scene of their labors of any place of public entertainment. I quite understood their drift, and after a stiff glass of grog, or rather more of the same, and with each a sovereign in hand, they made light of the attack, and swore that they would encounter a worse madman any day for the pleasure of meeting so gloom and good of look as your correspondent. I took their names and addresses in case they might be needed. They are as follows: Jack Smollett of Dudding's Rents, King George's Road, Great Walworth, and Thomas Snelling, Peter Farley's Road, Guide Court, Bethnal Green. They are both in the employment of Harris & Sons, Moving and Shipment Company, Orange Masters Yard, Soho. I shall report to you any matter of interest occurring here, and shall wire you at once if there is anything of importance. Believe me, dear sir, yours faithfully, Patrick Hennessy. Letter, Nina Harper to Lucy Westenra. Unopened by her. 18 September. My dearest Lucy, such a sad blow has befallen us. Mr. Hawkins has died very suddenly. Some may not think it so sad for us, but we had both come to love him, come to so love him that it really seems as though we had lost a father. I never knew either father or mother, so that the dear old man's death is a real blow to me. Jonathan is greatly distressed. It is not only that he feels sorrow, deep sorrow, for the dear good man who has befriended him all his life, and now at the end has treated him like his own son, and left him a fortune which the people of our modest bringing up is wealth beyond the dream of avarice. But Jonathan feels it on another account. He says the amount of responsibility which it puts upon him makes him nervous. He begins to doubt himself. I try to cheer him up, and my belief in him helps him to have a belief in himself. But it is here that the grave shock that he experienced tells upon him the most. Oh, it is too hard with a sweet, simple, noble, strong nature such as his, a nature which enabled him by our dear good friend's aid to rise from clerk to master in a few years, should be so injured that the very essence of its strength is gone. Forgive me, dear, if I worry you with my troubles in the midst of your own happiness. But Lucy, dear, I must tell someone, for the strain of keeping up a brave and cheerful appearance to Jonathan tries me, and I have no one here that I can confide in. I dread coming up to London, as we must do that day after tomorrow, for poor Mr. Hawkins left in his will that he was to be buried in the grave with his father. As there are no relations at all, Jonathan will have to be chief mourner. I shall try to run over to see you, dearest, if only for a few minutes. Forgive me for troubling you. With all blessings, your loving, Nina Parker. Dr. Seward's Diary, 20 September. Only resolution and habit can let me make an entry tonight. I am too miserable, too low-spirited, too sick of the world and all in it, including life itself, that I would not care if I heard this moment the flapping of the wings of the angel of death. And he has been flapping those grim wings to some purpose of late. Lucy's mother and Arthur's father, and now let me get on with my work. I duly relieved Van Helsing in his watch over Lucy. We wanted Arthur to go to rest also, but he refused at first. It was only when we told him that we should want him to help us during the day, and that we must not all break down for want of rest, lest Lucy should suffer, that he agreed to go. Van Helsing was very kind to him. "Come, my child," he said. "Come with me. You are sick and weak, and have had much sorrow and much mental pain, as well as that tax on your strength that we know of. You must not be alone, for to be alone is to be full of fears and alarms. Come to the drawing room where there is a big fire and there are 2 sofas. You shall lie on one and I on the other, and our sympathy will be comfort to each other, even though we do not speak, and even if we sleep." Arthur went off with him, casting back a longing look on Lucy's face, which lay on her pillow, almost whiter than the lawn. She lay quite still, and I looked around the room to see that all was as it should be. I could see that the professor had carried out in this room, as in the other, his purpose of using the garlic. The whole of the window sashes reeked with it, and round Lucy's neck, over the silk handkerchief which Van Helsing made her keep on, was a rough chaplet of the same odorous flowers. Lucy was breathing somewhat stertorously, and her face was at its worst, for the open mouth showed the pale gums. Her teeth, in the dim, uncertain light, seemed longer and sharper than they had been in the morning. In particular, by some trick of the light, the canine teeth looked longer and sharper than the rest. I sat down by her, and presently she moved uneasily. At the same moment there came a sort of dull flapping or buffeting at the window. I went over to it softly and peeped out by the corner of the blind. There was a full moonlight, and I could see that the noise was made by a great bat, which wheeled round, doubtless attracted by the light, although so dim, and every now and again struck the window with its wings. When I came back to my seat, I found that Lucy had moved slightly and had torn away the garlic flowers from her throat. I replaced them as well as I could, and sat watching them. Presently she woke, and I gave her food as Van Helsing had prescribed. She took but a little, and that languidly. There did not seem to be with her now the unconscious struggle for life and strength that had hitherto so marked her illness. It struck me as curious that the moment she became conscious, she pressed the garlic flowers close to her. It was certainly odd that whenever she got into that lethargic state, with the stertorous breathing, she put the flowers from her, but that when she waked, she clutched them close. There was no possibility of making any mistake about this, for in the long hours that followed, she had many spells of sleeping and waking, and repeated both actions many times.
Well, you're talking to the right person.
At 6 o'clock, Van Helsing came to relieve me. Arthur had then fallen into a doze, and he mercifully let him sleep on. When he saw Lucy's face, I could hear the hissing in-draw of his breath, and he said to me in a sharp whisper, "Draw up the blind. I want light." Then he bent down, and with his face almost touching Lucy's, examined her carefully. He removed the flowers and lifted the silk handkerchief from her throat. As he did so, he started back, and I could hear his ejaculation, "Mein Gott," as it was smothered in his throat. I bent over and looked too, and as I noticed, some queer chill came over me.
Have a look at the characteristics of my troop.
The wounds on the throat had absolutely
We are
disappeared.
awaiting your orders.
For fully 5
Have a
minutes,
look
Van
at the
Helsing
Carolina
stood
troops
looking at her
awaiting your orders.
with his face at its sternest. Then he turned to me and said calmly, "She is dying. It will not be long now. It will be much difference, mark
I
me,
have something you may
whether she dies conscious or in her sleep.
Here, take
Wake
this
that
medicine.
poor boy and let him come and see the last. He trusts us, and we had promised him."
You can
I went to
update
the
this
dining room and waked him. He was dazed for a moment, but when he saw the sunlight streaming in through the edges of the shutters, he thought he was late and expressed his fear. I assured him that Lucy
Let
was
me
still
show you the
asleep,
statistics of
but
her,
told
okay?
him as gently as I could that both Van Helsing and I feared that the end was near. He covered his face with his hands and slid down on his knees by the sofa, where he remained perhaps a minute with his head buried, praying, whilst his shoulders shook with grief. I took him by the hand and raised
Let's
him.
go back to the palace.
"Come," I said, "my dear old fellow, summon all your fortitude. It will be best and easiest for her." When we came into Lucy's room, I could see that Van Helsing had, with his usual forethought, been putting matters straight and making things look as pleasing as possible. He had even brushed Lucy's hair so that it lay on the pillow in its usual sunny ripples. When we came into the room, she opened her eyes and, seeing him, whispered softly, "Arthur! Oh, my love, I am so glad you have come." He was stooping to kiss her when Van Helsing motioned him back. "No," he whispered, "not yet. Hold her hand. It will comfort her more." So Arthur took her hand and knelt beside her, and she looked her best, with all the soft lines matching the angelic beauty of her eyes. Then gradually her eyes closed, and she sank to sleep. For a little bit her breast heaved softly, and her breath came and went like a tired child's. And then, insensibly, there came the strange change which I had noticed in the night. Her breathing grew stertorous, the mouth opened, and the pale gums drawn back made the teeth look longer and sharper than ever. In a sort of sleep-waking, vague, unconscious way, she opened her eyes, which were now dull and hard at once, and said in a soft, voluptuous voice, such as I had never heard from her lips, "Arthur! Oh, my love, I am so glad you have come. Kiss me." Arthur bent eagerly over to kiss her, but at that instant Van Helsing, who, like me, had been startled by her voice, swooped upon him, and catching him by the neck with both hands, dragged him back with a fury of strength which I never thought he could have possessed,
Stored here.
and actually hurled him almost across the room. "Not on your life," he said. "Not for your living soul and hers." And he stood between them like a lion at bay. Arthur was so taken aback that he did not for a moment know what to do or say, and before any impulse of violence could seize him, he realized the place and the occasion and stood silent, waiting. I kept my eyes fixed on Lucy, as did Van Helsing, and we saw a spasm as of rage flit like a shadow over her face. The sharp teeth clamped together. Then her eyes closed, and she breathed heavily. Very shortly after, she opened her eyes in all their softness, and putting out her poor, pale, thin hand, took Van Helsing's great brown one. Drawing it to her, she kissed it. "My true friend," she said in a faint voice, but with untellable pathos. "My true friend, and his. Oh, guard him, and give me peace." "I swear it," he said solemnly, kneeling beside her and holding up his hand as one who registers an oath. Then he turned to Arthur and said to him, "Come, my child, take her hand in yours and kiss her on the forehead, and only once."
Paul,
Their eyes met
as you know,
instead of their lips,
we haven't been here
and
at the
so
palace long.
they parted.
This old building may
Lucy's
still
eyes
hold
closed,
secrets.
and Van Helsing, who had been
enemies
watching
were here
closely,
recently.
took Arthur's
We've already
arm
found
and drew
some
him
tracks.
away. And then Lucy's breathing
Well,
became stertorous
your
again,
mother Jessica
and
has
all
this
at once
special talent
it
for
ceased.
Well,
"It is
sounding
all
rooms and
over,"
finding
said
secret
Van
doors.
Helsing.
Go
"She
with
is
them.
dead."
Search the palace.
I took Arthur by the arm and led him away to the
Remember
drawing
that
room,
now
where we
our
sat
most
down,
important
or
task
where he sat down
is to
and covered
achieve
his
good
face
spice
with his
production.
hands, sobbing in a way that nearly broke me down to see. I went back to the room and found Van Helsing looking at poor Lucy, and his face was sterner than ever. Some change had come over
I
her
must
body.
congratulate you
Death
on
had
finding
given
this
back part of
prospective
her
treasure.
beauty, for her brow
We're now
and
well on the
cheeks had
way.
recovered some of their flowing lines.
Here
Even
are
the
our
lips
current
had lost their
stocks of
deadly
spice.
pallor. It was as if the blood,
You
no
can
longer
notice that
needed for the
yesterday
working of the
our
heart,
spice
had
production
gone
was
to
better
make the
than the day
harshness
before.
of death as little rude as might be.
Do remember that spice
We thought her
is by
dying
far
whilst
the most
she slept,
valuable
and
substance
sleeping
in the
when
whole
she died.
universe.
I
And
stood beside Van Helsing and said, "Ah, well, poor girl, there is peace for her at last. It is the end." He turned to me and said with grave solemnity, "Not so. Alas, not so. It is only the beginning." When I asked him what he meant, he only shook his head and answered, "We can do nothing as yet.
I'm following you.
Wait and see." Oh, so that concludes chapter 12 of Dracula. So it turns out both answers were correct. It's a little bit like Schrodinger's Lucy. She was alive to start the chapter, and now she is dead at the end of the chapter. Although there seems like a good chance Lucy might be coming back as a vampire. Let's see what happens in tomorrow's reading of Dracula by Bram Stoker. Thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to reading more with you tomorrow, and I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful Hi friends, welcome back to the Manager of the Beach Library. I'm happy to join you for day 13 of Dracula by Bram Stoker. 13 is a wonderfully lucky or unlucky number, however you want to look at it, which seems auspicious for reading a spooky story like Dracula. So let's start out with some wonderful tea. Today's tea is a brand new tea. I've not yet tried it. It is a little Earl Grey tea, and it's actually called Dorian Gray. It's like the picture of Dorian Gray, which is another book I grabbed off my shelf. Oh, it's not bad if we want to go ahead and maybe see this for our next read out, or see what else we end up doing. But the tea is what I'm trying today. So the Dorian Gray black tea, which is from Point Loma Teas, if anyone is interested in trying it, it says that the ingredients are black tea, essential fruity note of bergamot, apple, corn flowers, linden, and mallow petals. I don't even know what linden is, but I'm excited to try it in tea. So let's go give that a taste. And I realized too that, since it says to only steep it for 3 to 5 minutes, I actually did pull out the tea leaves this time. So now we just have our tea with a proper amount of steeping time. Let's go ahead and give that a taste and see how that comes out today.
Thank you, Livy.
It has a really pretty color to it. It's like, from here, I'm not sure how it's photographing on the video, but from my angle, it's like a light brown color, but it almost has like a reddish hue to it. It's very pretty. Ooh.
As we are almost all gathered here, I would like to congratulate Paul for what he's done
But
since
it
we
just
arrived
smells
here
so
on
good. Let's see. It's an Earl Grey, but it's a more delicate flavor.
He has visited 6 sieges, and now these troops of friends are working for us. That's a good start.
It reminds me of something. I'm trying to think what it is.
I'm pleased to
It's
notice
not
that
sweet,
Paul
but it
now
has
a rising charisma.
It reminds me of something sweet. Oh, I may have to have a few more cups of this before I can figure out what it is. It does say it has apple,
Paul,
cornflowers,
I'm very
linden,
proud
and
of
mallow, along with the bergamot
All
and
of my
black tea.
hopes are set on you.
It has a really nice flavor. Helen commented that linden flower tea is very calming. I don't think I've had linden specifically, so I'm not sure if that's the smell I'm identifying, but something in it smells very good. It's a delicate flavor. It's not as strong as the standard Earl Grey or even the one that I had yesterday, the Earl Grey
generated in the center.
But it's wonderful.
No messages have arrived yet.
Ooh, that's really good. I highly recommend that one if anyone wants to try some. It is the Dorian Gray tea. As I said, similar to the portrait of Dorian Gray, but it has said this time it is the tea of Dorian Gray. It's delicious. Okay, let's talk a little bit about yesterday's chapter in Dracula. Yesterday we read chapter 12, and chapter 12 started with, or we had ended the previous chapter with Lucy not sure if she was going to make it through the night. And when Dr. Stewart goes in, they find out that, that's when they realize that the maids have been drugged. And they never do exactly say who drugged them. I mean, I assume it's somehow Dracula related, but you couldn't get into the house initially, so I'm not exactly sure. Maybe he had time to drug them, but it must be Dracula related. But yeah, the maids are drugged, the mother is dead, and Lucy is barely clinging to life. Van Helsing and Dr. Seward are able to stabilize her health, and in fact, they're able to bring her back a little bit when, they're able to stabilize her when Quincy Morris, the American friend who had tried to also to wed Lucy but was rejected by her and Arthur comes to visit on behest of Arthur just to check on how she's doing. And when he comes in, they say, "We need your blood. Will you please do another transfusion?" And he says, "Of course, anything for Lucy." So they hook him up to like the hose or whatever it is they're using to do the blood transfusion for Lucy.
This communication.
And afterwards, Lucy seems to be a bit restored, but not as much as she had been. And what's interesting here too is that Quincy talks with Dr. Stewart, and he says how it seems to me that, from what I gather from what he said, I'm not the first one to use the blood. Sounds like you've given blood, doctor's given blood, and I suspect that Art also gave blood. He looked rather weak days ago, and it's kind of strange that she is doing things like that. He said it reminded him of when he was in Argentina on the Pampas, and he had a mare that I was fond of go to grass all in the night. One of those big bats they call vampires that got at her in the night. And what was gorging the veins up was that there wasn't blood left when she stand up. So that's another instance of the suggestion that vampires, at least on the radar, even though of course we're just talking about the vampire bat and not a vampire person. But again, that's sort of starting to come out there again, that there must be some way, some place that blood is going, because if she's received 4 transfusions of blood, for her to be as weak as she was, the blood must be going somewhere, and that's what they're saying. What took that blood out? And so, as the chapter continues, Lucy is not doing well. Quincy leaves, Arthur comes. They've also interspersed this with 2 letters from Mina Harker. And Mina says basically that, her husband is doing better. He has actually he's gone back, and his employer, Mr. Hawkins, Harker and Hawkins, it's harder to remember. Her husband, Jonathan Harker, was sort of adopted by his employer, Mr. Hawkins, who has said, I've known you for years, I trust you, I care for you, I don't have any children, I'd basically like to adopt you and have you take over the business, and you're welcome in my home, and I've left you everything. And it's a good thing, and they're very happy. The very next day, though, she writes a letter again saying that, you wouldn't believe it, but Mr. Hawkins has died very suddenly, so we were quite distraught about that. Jonathan was very nervous, especially after the ordeal that he's just had in Pennsylvania, and so we will see you soon, because Jonathan is going to be going to London for the funeral service of Mr. Hawkins, and so I will try to come over to see you. I long to see you, it's been so long. So that's between the correspondence that Mina sends to Lucy, which is noted each time that was unopened by Lucy, because Lucy is, of course, too ill to open those letters. Meanwhile, too, there's a little bit interspersed from Patrick Hennessy, who is somebody else who works at the lunatic asylum, and he basically has another instance of Renfield being a bit crazy. Now, let's go back to the key stuff of this chapter. Lucy's health is fading quickly, and by September 20th, they're pretty sure she's not going to make it. And indeed, she is not. So Seward is telling the story of what Lucy's last was, and basically that Arthur Holmes has also come to visit, and they look at Lucy, and she's just getting worse and worse. The doctor is the doctor, and they call up Arthur to see him, and then they look also at her neck. Sorry, this is now back and forth. They look at her neck, and they remove the flowers and also the silk handkerchief that Dr. Van Helsing had put around Lucy's neck, and they see that the wounds on her neck have absolutely disappeared after being there for so long. Lucy is dying, and it's interesting too, because she has these moments where her breathing is gentle and soft, and then her breathing gets sharp. They use the word stentorous. or stertorous, excuse me. And each time when she's breathing softly, which seems to be in her natural state, as she starts to come awake, she clutches the garlic wreath to her chest with like gratitude because this thing gives her security. But each time that she sinks into the deeper sleep and her breathing gets harsh, she pushes them away from her. And so it's an interesting thing of like seeing the two natures of Lucy as she is, and Lucy as she's becoming on the influence of the vampire. So, as Lucy is having her last moments, they do call Arthur to come say goodbye to her. And she basically is like, oh, I'm so glad to see you. And as Van Helsing goes in to kiss her, Van Helsing says, no, don't kiss her. Just hold her hand. It will be better. And then suddenly Lucy has another of those changes again where she falls asleep. And when she awakens, it seems that her breathing is different. Her eyes are hard and dull. And her gums, because they've drawn back so much, it makes her teeth look longer and sharper. And so we know this is Lucy in her vampire state. And she indeed calls to Arthur in a different voice to come closer so that she may kiss him. As he approaches, Van Helsing flings him aside. It's like, no, not on your life, not for your living soul, and for hers. What I find fascinating about this too is that Van Helsing, he's disturbed by this, but he recognizes that the doctor is trying to help Lucy and that Lucy's dying, so he doesn't get upset about it. What's fascinating to me is that Lucy, it says, there's a moment where they see the rage flit across her, but then she becomes gentle again, and again, she goes back to her own self, and she takes the hand of Van Helsing, kisses it, and says, my true friend and his, will guard him and give me peace. And so it kind of makes me at least wonder how much Lucy is aware of the change that's going on, that she is not her own self in those moments, and that she is perhaps afraid of what may come next. What we see in this realm, though, is that Lucy does die, and Arthur goes off to cry, and Van Helsing, once he observes to Dr. Seward that it is not the end, it is only the beginning. And Dr. Seward notices too that Lucy, it seems, is becoming almost refreshed after death, that she looks healthier, that her lips have lost their pallor, and it seems that the blood now is going back into restoring her youth and her beauty, now that it's no longer needed to work the heart. So, the chapter ends with the immortal words, we can do nothing as yet, wait and see. But the wait is done. Let's find out what happens now in chapter 13 of Dracula. Chapter 13, Dr. Seward's Diary, continued. The funeral was arranged for the next succeeding day, so that Lucy and her mother might be buried together. I attended to all the ghastly formalities, and the urbane undertaker proved that his staff was afflicted, or blessed, with something of his own obsequious suavity. Even the woman who performed the last offices for the dead remarked to me, in a confidential, rather professional way, when she had come out from the death chamber, "She makes a very beautiful corpse, sir. It's quite a privilege to attend on her. It's not too much to say that she will do credit to our establishment." I noticed that Van Helsing never kept far away. This was possible from the disordered state of things in the household. There were no relatives at hand, and as Arthur had to be back the next day to attend at his father's funeral, we were unable to notify anyone who should have been hidden. Under the circumstances, Van Helsing and I took it upon ourselves to examine papers, etc. He insisted upon looking over Lucy's papers himself. I asked him why, for I feared that he, being a foreigner, might not be quite aware of English legal requirements, and so might be in ignorance, and so might in ignorance make some unnecessary trouble. He answered me, I know, you forget that I am a lawyer as well as a doctor. But this is not altogether for the law. You knew that when you avoided the coroner. I have more to import. There may be papers more, such as this. As he spoke, he took from his pocketbook the memorandum which had been in Lucy's breast, and which she had torn in her sleep. When you find anything of the solicitor who is for the late Mrs. Westenra, seal all her papers and write him tonight. For me, I watch here in the room, and in Miss Lucy's old room all night, and I myself search for what may be. It is not well that her very thoughts go into the hands of strangers. I went on with my part of the work, and in another half hour had found the name and address of Mrs. Westenra's solicitor, and had written to him. All the poor lady's papers were in order. Explicit directions regarding the place of burial were given. I had hardly sealed the letter when, to my surprise, Van Helsing walked into the room saying, "Can I help you, friend John? I am free, and if I may, my service is to you." "Have you got what you look for?" I asked, to which he replied, "I did not look for any specific thing. I only hope to find, and find I have, all that there was. Only some letters and a few memoranda, and a diary new begun. But I have them here, and we shall for the present say nothing of them. I shall see the poor lad tomorrow evening, and I shall use some." When he finished with his hand, he said to me, "And now, friend John, I think we may in the bed. We want sleep, both you and I, and rest to recuperate. Tomorrow we shall have much to do, but for the tonight there is no need of us, alas." Before turning in, we went to look at poor Lucy. The undertaker had certainly done his work well, for the room was turned into a small chapelle ardente. There was a wilderness of beautiful white flowers, and death was made as little repulsive as might be. The end of the winding sheet was laid over the face. When the professor bent over and turned it gently back, we both started at the beauty before us, the tall wax candle showing a sufficient light to note it well. All Lucy's loveliness had come back to her in death, and the hours that had passed, instead of leaving traces of decay's effacing fingers, had but restored the beauty of life, till positively I could not believe my eyes that I was looking at a corpse. The professor looked sternly grave. He had not loved her as I had, and there was no need for tears in his eyes. He said to me, "Remain till I return," and left the room. He came back with a handful of wild garlic from the box waiting in the hall, but which had not been opened, and placed the flowers amongst the others on and around the bed. Then he took from his neck, inside his collar, a little gold crucifix, and placed it over the mouth. He restored the sheet to its place, and we came away. I was undressing in my own room when, with a premonitory tap at the door, he entered, and at once began to speak. Peremptory is what I think it should be. With a premonitory tap at the door, he entered, and at once began to speak. "Tomorrow I want you to bring me, before night, a set of post-mortem knives." "Must we make an autopsy?" I asked. "Yes and no. I want to operate, but not as you think. Let me tell you now, but not a word to another. I want to cut off her head and take out her heart." "Ah, you a surgeon and so shocked. You, whom I have seen with no tremble of hand or heart, do operations of life and death that make the rest shudder. Oh, but I must not forget, my dear friend John, that you loved her, and I have not forgotten it, for it is I that shall operate, and you must not help. I would like to do it tonight, but for Arthur I must not. He will be free after his father's funeral tomorrow, and he will want to see her, to see it. Then, when she is coffined ready for the next day, you and I shall come when all sleep. We shall unscrew the coffin lid and shall do our operation, and then replace all so that none know, save we alone." "But why do it at all? The girl is dead. Why mutilate her poor body without need? And if there is no necessity for a post-mortem and nothing to gain by it, no good to her, to us, to science, to human knowledge, why do it? Without such, it is monstrous." For answer, he put his hand on my shoulder and said with infinite tenderness, "Friend John, I pity your poor bleeding heart, and I love you the more because it does so bleed. If I could, I would take on myself the burden that you do bear. But there are things that you know not, but that you shall know, and bless me for knowing, though they are not pleasant things. John, my child, you have been my friend now many years, and yet did you ever know me to do any without good cause? I may err, I am but man, but I believe in all I do. Was it not for these causes that you set for me when the great trouble came? Yes. Were you not amazed, nay horrified, when I would not let Arthur kiss his love, though she was dying, and snatched him away by all my strength? Yes. And yet you saw how she thanked me with her so beautiful dying eyes, her voice too, so weak, and she kissed my old rough hand and blessed me. Yes. And did you not hear me swear promise to her, that so she closed her eyes grateful? Yes. Well, I have good reason now for all I want to do. You have for many years trusted me. You have believed me weeks past, when there be things so strange that you might have well doubt. Believe me yet a little, friend John. If you trust me not, then I must tell what I think, and that is not perhaps well. And if I work, as work I shall, no matter trust or no trust, without my friend trust in me, I work with heavy heart, and feel, oh, so lonely when I want all help and courage that may be. He paused a moment and went on solemnly, Friend John, there are strange and terrible days before us. Let us not be two, but one, that so we work to a good end. Will you not have faith in me? I took his hand and promised him. I held my door open as he went away, and watched him go to his room and close the door. As I stood without moving, I saw one of the maids pass silently along the passage. She had her back to me, so did not see me, and go into the room where Lucy lay. The sight touched me. Devotion is so rare, and we are so grateful to those who show it unasked to those we love. Here was a poor girl putting aside the terrors which she naturally had of death to go watch alone by the bier of the mistress whom she loved, so that the poor clay might not be lonely till laid to eternal rest. I must have slept long and soundly, for it was broad daylight when Van Helsing waked me by coming into my room. He came over to my bedside and said, You need not trouble about the knives. We shall not do it. Why not? I asked, for his solemnity of the night before had greatly impressed me. Because, he said sternly, it is too late or too early. See, here he held up the little gold crucifix. This was stolen in the night. How stolen? I asked in wonder, since you have it now. Because I get it back from the worthless wretch who stole it, from the woman who robbed the dead and the living. Her punishment will surely come, but not through me. She knew not altogether what she did, and thus, unknowing, she only stole. Now we must wait. He went away on the word, leaving me with a new mystery to think of, a new puzzle to grapple with. The forenoon was a dreary time, but at noon the solicitor came. Mr. Markand, of Holman, Sons, Markand, and Litterdale. He was very genial and very appreciative of what we had done, and took off our hands all cares as to details. During lunch he told us that Mrs. Westenra had for some time expected sudden death from her heart, and had put her affairs in absolute order. He informed us that, with the exception of a certain entailed property of Lucy's father, which now, in default of direct issue, went back to a distant branch of the family, the whole estate, real and personal, was left absolutely to Arthur Holmwood. When he had told us so much, he went on, Frankly, we did our best to prevent such a testamentary disposition, and pointed out certain contingencies that might leave her daughter either penniless or not so free as she should be to act regarding a matrimonial alliance. Indeed, we pressed the matter so far that we almost came into collision, for she asked us if we were or were not prepared to carry out her wishes. Of course, we had then no alternative but to accept. We were right in principle. In 99 times out of 100, we should have proved, by the logic of events, the accuracy of our judgment. Frankly, however, I must admit that in this case, any other form of disposition would have rendered impossible the carrying out of her wishes. For by predeceasing her daughter, the latter would have come into possession of the property, and even had she only survived her mother by 5 minutes, her property would, in case there were no will, and a will was a practical impossibility in such a case, have been treated at her decease as under intestacy. in which case Lord Godalming, though so dear of a friend, would have had no claim in the world, and the inheritors, being remote, would not be likely to abandon their just rights for sentimental reasons regarding an entire stranger. I assure you, my dear sirs, I am rejoiced at the result. Perfectly rejoiced. He was a good fellow, but his rejoicing at the one little part in which he was officially interested, of so great a tragedy, was an object lesson in the limitations of sympathetic understanding. He did not remain long, but said he would look in later in the day and see Lord Godalming. His coming, however, had been a certain comfort to us, since it assured us that we should not have to dread hostile criticism as to any of our acts. Arthur was expected at 5 o'clock, so a little before that time we visited the death chamber. It was so in very truth, for now both mother and daughter lay in it. The undertaker, true to his craft, had made the best display he could of his goods, and there was a mortuary air about the place that lowered our spirits at once. Van Helsing ordered the former arrangement to be adhered to, explaining that, as Lord Godalming was coming very soon, it would be less harrowing to his feelings to see all that was left of his fiancée quite alone. The undertaker seemed shocked at his own stupidity, and exerted himself to restore things to the condition in which we had left them the night before, so that when Arthur came, such shocks to his feelings as we could avoid were saved. Poor fellow! He looked desperately sad and broken. Even his stalwart manhood seemed to have shrunk somewhat under the strain of his much-tried emotions. He had, I knew, been very genuinely and devotedly attached to his father, and to lose him, and at such a time, was a bitter blow to him. With me he was warm as ever, and to Van Helsing he was sweetly courteous, but I could not help seeing that there was some constraint with him. The professor noticed it too, and motioned me to bring him upstairs. I did so, and left him at the door of the room, as I felt he would like to be quite alone with her, but he took my arm and led me in, saying huskily, "You loved her too, old fellow. She told me all about it, and there was no friend had a closer place in her heart than you. I don't know how to thank you for all you have done for her. I can't think yet." Here he suddenly broke down, and threw his arms round my shoulders, and laid his head on my breast, crying, "Oh, Jack, Jack, what shall I do? The whole of life seems gone from me all at once, and there is nothing in the wide world for me to live for." I comforted him as well as I could. In such cases, men do not need much expression. A grip of the hand, the tightening of an arm over the shoulder, a sob in unison, are expressions of sympathy dear to a man's heart. I stood still and silent till his sobs died away, and then I said softly to him, "Come and look at her." Together we moved over to the bed, and I lifted the lawn from her face. God, how beautiful she was! Every hour seemed to be enhancing her loveliness. It frightened and amazed me somewhat, and as for Arthur, he fell a-trembling, and finally was shaken with doubt as with an ague. At last, after a long pause, he said to me in a faint whisper, "Jack, is she really dead?" I assured him sadly that it was so, and went on to suggest, for I felt that such a horrible doubt should not have life for a moment longer than I could help, that it often happened that after death faces became softened and even resolved into their youthful beauty, that this was especially so when death had been preceded by any acute or prolonged suffering. I seemed to quite do away with any doubt, and after kneeling beside the couch for a while and looking at her lovingly and long, he turned aside. I told him that that must be goodbye, as the coffin had to be prepared. So he went back and took her dead hand in his and kissed it, and bent over and kissed her forehead. He came away, fondly looking back over his shoulder at her as he came. I left him in the drawing room and told Van Helsing that he had said goodbye, so the latter went to the kitchen to tell the undertaker's men to proceed with the preparations and to screw up the coffin. When he came out of the room again, I told him of Arthur's question, and he replied, "I am not surprised. Just now I doubted for a moment myself." We all dined together, and I could see that poor Art was trying to make the best of things. Van Helsing had been silent all dinner time, but when we had lit our cigars, he said, Lord But Arthur interrupted him. No, no, not that, for God's sake. Not yet, at any rate. Forgive me, sir. I did not mean to speak offensively. It is only because my loss is so recent. The professor answered very sweetly. I only used that name because I was in doubt. I must not call you Mr., and I have grown to love you. Yes, my dear boy, to love you as Arthur. Arthur held out his hand and took the old man's warmly. Call me what you will, he said. I hope I may always have the title of a friend. And let me say that I am at a loss for words to thank you for your goodness to my poor dear. He paused a moment and went on. I know that she understood your goodness even better than I do. And if I was rude or in any way wanting at that time you acted so... You remember, the professor nodded. You must forgive me. He answered with a grave kindness. I know it was hard for you to quite trust me then, for to trust such violence needs to understand, and I take it that you do not, that you cannot trust me now, for you do not yet understand. And there may be more times when I shall want you to trust when you cannot, and may not, and must not yet understand. But the time will come when your trust shall be whole and complete in me, and when you shall understand as though the sunlight himself shone through. Then you shall bless me from first to last, for your own sake and for the sake of others, and for her dear sake to whom I swore to protect. And indeed, sir, said Arthur warmly, I shall in all ways trust you. I know and believe you have been, I know and believe you have a very noble heart, and you are Jack's friend, and you were hers. You shall do what you like. The professor cleared his throat a couple of times as though about to speak and finally said, May I ask you something now? Certainly. You know that Mrs. Westenra left you all her property? No. Poor dear, I never thought of it. And as it is all yours, you have a right to deal with it as you will. I want you to give me permission to read all Miss Lucy's papers and letters. Believe me, it is no idle curiosity. I have a motive of which, to be sure, she would have approved. I have them all here. I took them before we knew that all was yours, so that no strange hands might touch them, no strange eye look through words into her soul. I shall keep them if I may. Even you may not see them yet, but I shall keep them safe. No word shall be lost, and in the good time I shall give them back to you. It's a hard thing, I ask, but you will do it, will you not? For Lucy's sake? Arthur spoke out heartily like his old self. Dr. Van Helsing, you may do what you will. I feel that in saying this I am doing what my dear one would have approved. I shall not trouble you with questions till the time comes. The old professor stood up as he said solemnly, And you are right. There will be pain for us all, but it will not be all pain, nor will this pain be the last. We, and you too, you most of all, my dear boy, will have to pass through the bitter water before we reach the sweet. But we must be brave of heart and unselfish, and do our duty, and all will be well. I slept on a sofa in Arthur's room that night. Van Helsing did not go to bed at all. He went to and fro, as if patrolling the house, and was never out of sight of the room where Lucy lay in her coffin, strewn with the wild garlic flowers, which sent, through the odor of lily and rose, a heavy, overpowering smell into the night. Mina Harper's Journal, 22 September. In the train to Exeter, Jonathan sleeping. It seems only yesterday that the last entry was made, and yet how much between then, in Whitby, and all the world before me. Jonathan away and no news of him, and now, married to Jonathan. Jonathan a solicitor, a partner, rich, master of his business. Mr. Hawkins dead and buried, and Jonathan with another attack that may harm him. Some day he may ask me about it. Down it all goes. I am rusty in my shorthand. See what unexpected prosperity does for us. so it may be as well to freshen it up again with an exercise anyhow.
Have you seen the two harvesters around?
The service was very simple and very solemn. There were only ourselves and the servants there, one or two old friends of his from Exeter, his London agent, and a gentleman representing Sir John Paxton, the president of the Incorporated Law Society. Jonathan and I stood hand in hand, and we felt that our best and dearest friend was gone from us. We came back to town quietly, taking a bus to Hyde Park Corner. Jonathan thought it would interest me to go into the Row for a while, so we sat down. But there were very few people there, and it was sad-looking and desolate to see so many empty chairs. It made us think of the empty chair at home, so we got up and walked down Piccadilly. Jonathan was holding me by the arm the way he used to in old days before I went to school. I felt it very improper, for you can't go on for some years teaching etiquette and decorum to other girls without the pedantry of it biting into yourself a bit. But it was Jonathan, and he was my husband, and we didn't know anybody who saw us, and we didn't care if they did. So on we walked. I was looking at a very beautiful girl in a big cartwheel hat, sitting in a Victoria outside Giuliano's, when I felt Jonathan clutch my arm so tight that he hurt me, and he said under his breath, "My God." I am always anxious about Jonathan, for I fear that some nervous fit may upset him again. So I turned to him quickly and asked him what it was that disturbed him. He was very pale, and his eyes seemed bulging out as, half in terror and half in amazement, he gazed at a tall, thin man with a beaky nose and black mustache and pointed beard, who was also observing the pretty girl. He was looking at her so hard that he did not see either of us, and so I had a good view of him. His face was not a good face. It was hard and cruel and sensual, and big white teeth that looked all the whiter because his lips were so red, were pointed like an animal's. Jonathan kept staring at him till I was afraid he would notice. I feared he might take it ill. He looked so fierce and nasty. I asked Jonathan why he was so disturbed, and he answered, evidently thinking that I knew as much about it as he did, "Do you see who it is?" "No, dear," I said. "I don't know him. Who is it?" His answer seemed to shock and thrill me, for it was said as if he did not know that it was me, Nina, to whom he was speaking. "It is the man himself." The poor dear was evidently terrified at something, very greatly terrified. I do believe that if he had not had me to lean on and to support him, he would have sunk down. He kept staring. A man came out of the shop with a small parcel and gave it to the lady, who then drove off. The dark man kept his eyes fixed on her, and when the carriage moved up Piccadilly, he followed in the same direction and hailed a hansom. Jonathan kept looking after him and said, as if to himself, "I believe it is the Count, but he has grown young. My God, if this be so! Oh, my God! My God! If I only knew! If I only knew!" He was distressing himself so much that I feared to keep his mind on the subject by asking him any questions, so I remained silent. I drew away quietly, and he, holding my arm, came easily. We walked a little further, and then went in and sat for a while in the Green Park. It was a hot day for autumn, and there was a comfortable seat in a shady place. After a few minutes, staring at nothing, Jonathan's eyes closed, and he went quickly into a sleep, with his head on my shoulder. I thought it was the best thing for him, so did not disturb him. In about 20 minutes he woke up and said to me quite cheerfully, "Why, Nina, have I been asleep? Oh, do forgive me for being so rude. Come, and we'll have a cup of tea somewhere." He had evidently forgotten all about the dark stranger, as in his illness he had forgotten all about that episode as in his illness he had forgotten all that this episode had reminded him of. I don't like this lapsing into forgetfulness. It may make or continue some injury to the brain. I must not ask him for fear I shall do more harm than good, but I must somehow learn the facts of his journey abroad. The time has come, I fear, when I must open that parcel and know what is written. Oh, Jonathan, you will, I know, forgive me if I do wrong, but it is for your own dear sake. Later, a sad homecoming in every way. The house empty of the dear soul who was so good to us. Jonathan still pale and dizzy under a slight relapse of his malady. and now a telegram from Van Helsing, whoever he may be. You will be grieved to hear that Mrs. Westenra died 5 days ago, and that Lucy died the day before yesterday. They were both buried today. Oh, what a wealth of sorrow in a few words. Poor Mrs. Westenra. Poor Lucy. Gone, gone, never to return to us. And poor, poor Arthur, to have lost such a sweetness out of his life. God help us all to bear our troubles. Dr. Seward's diary, 22 September. It is all over. Arthur has gone back to Ring and has taken Quincy Morris with him. What a fine fellow is Quincy. I believe in my heart of hearts that he suffered as much about Lucy's death as any of us. But he bore himself through it like a moral Viking. If America can go on breeding men like that, she will be a power in the world indeed. Van Helsing is lying down, having a rest preparatory to his journey. He goes over to Amsterdam tonight, but says he returns tomorrow night, that he only wants to make some arrangements which can only be made personally. He is to stop with me then, if he can. He says he has work to do in London, which may take him some time. Poor old fellow. I fear that the strain of the past week has broken down even his iron strength. All the time of the burial he was, I could see, putting some terrible restraint on himself. When it was all over, we were standing beside Arthur, who, poor fellow, was speaking of his part in the operation where his blood had been transfused to his Lucy's veins. I could see Van Helsing's face grow white and purple by turns. Arthur was saying that he felt since then as if they two had been really married and that she was his wife in the sight of God. None of us said a word of the other operations, and none of us ever shall. Arthur and Quincy went away together to the station, and Van Helsing and I came on here. The moment we were alone in the carriage, he gave way to a regular fit of hysterics. He has denied to me since that it was hysterics, and insisted that it was only his sense of humor asserting itself under very terrible conditions.
We are the
He laughed till he cried, and I had to draw down the
days.
blinds lest anyone should see us and misjudge. And then he cried till he laughed again, and laughed and cried together, just as a woman does. I tried to be stern with him as one is to a woman under the circumstances, but it had no effect. Men and women are so different in manifestations of nervous strength or weakness. Then when his face grew grave and stern again, I asked him why his mirth, and why at such a time. His reply was in a way characteristic of him, for it was logical and forceful and mysterious.
Show me where you want me to go.
He said,
Okay.
Ah, you don't comprehend, friend John. Do not think that I am not sad, though I laugh. See, I have cried even when the laugh did choke me. But no more think that I am all sorry when I cry. The laugh ye come just the same. Keep it always with you, that laughter who knock at your door and say, May I come in? Is not the true laughter. No, he is a king, and he come when and how he like. He ask no persons, he choose no time of suitability. He say, I am here. Behold, in example I grieve my heart out for that so sweet young girl. I give my blood for her, though I am old and worn. I give my time, my skill, my sleep. I let my other sufferers want, that she may have all. And yet I can laugh at her very grave. Laugh when the clay from the spade of the sexton drop upon her coffin and say thud, thud to my heart, till it send back the blood from my cheek. My heart bleed for that poor boy, that dear boy, so of the age of mine own boy, had I been so blessed that he lived, and with his hair and eyes the same. There, you know now why I love him so. And yet when you say things that touch my husband heart to the quick, and make my father heart yearn to him as to no other man, not even to you, friend John, for we are more level in experiences than father and son. Yet even at such moment, King laugh, he come to me and shout and bellow in my ear, Here I am, till the blood come dance back and bring some of the sunshine that he carried with him to my cheek. Oh, friend John, it is a strange world, a sad world, a world full of miseries and woes and troubles. And yet, when King Laugh come, he make them all dance to the tune he play. Bleeding hearts and dry bones of the courtyard, and tears that burn as they fall. all dance together to the music that he made with that smileless mouth of him. And believe me, friend John, that he is good to come and kind. We men and women are like ropes drawn tight with strain that pull us different ways. Then tears come, and like the rain on the ropes, they brace us up, until perhaps the strain becomes too great, and we break. But King laughed, he come like the sunshine, and he ease off the strain again, and we bear to go on with our labor, what it may be. I did not like to wound him by pretending not to see his idea, but as I did not yet understand the cause of his laughter, I asked him. As he answered me, his face grew stern, and he said in quite a different tone, oh, it was the grim irony of it all. This so lovely lady, garlanded with flowers, that looked so fair as life, till one by one we wondered if she were truly dead. She laid in that so fine marble house in that lonely churchyard, where rest so many of her kin, laid there with the mother who loved her and whom she loved, and that sacred bell going toll, 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 so sad and slow, and those holy men with the white garments of the angel, pretending to read books, and yet all the time their eyes never on the page, and all of us with the bowed head. And all for what? She is dead. So, is it not? Well, for the life of me, Professor, I said, I can't see anything to laugh at in all that. Why, your explanation makes it a harder puzzle than before. But even if the burial service was comic, what about poor Art and his trouble? Why, his heart was simply breaking. Just so. Said he not that the transfusion of his blood to her veins had made her truly his bride? Yes, and it was a sweet and comforting idea for him. Quite so. But there was a difficulty, friend John. If so that, then what about the others? Oh, then this so sweet maid is a polyandrist, and me, with my poor wife dead to me, but alive by church's law, though no wits all gone, even I, who am faithful husband to this now no wife, am bigamist. I don't see where the joke comes in there either, I said, and I did not feel particularly pleased with him for saying such things. He laid his hand on my arm and said, Friend John, forgive me if I pain. I showed not my feeling to others when it would wound, but only to you, my old friend, whom I can trust. If you could have looked into my very heart then, when I want to laugh, if you could have done so when the laugh arrived, if you could do so now, when King Laugh doth pack up his crown and all that is to him, for he go far, far away from me, and for a long, long time, maybe you would perhaps pity me the most of all. I was touched by the tenderness of his tone and asked why. Because I know. And now we are all scattered, and for many a long day, loneliness will sit over our roofs with brooding wings. Lucy lies in the tomb of her kin, a lordly death house in a lonely churchyard, away from teeming London where the air is fresh, and the sun rises over Hampstead Hill, and where wild flowers grow of their own accord. So I can finish this diary, and God only knows if I shall ever begin another. If I do, or if I ever open this again, it will be to deal with different people and different themes, for here at the end, where the romance of my life is told, ere I go back to take up the thread of my life work, I say sadly and without hope, finis. The Westminster Gazette, 25 September. A Hampstead mystery. The neighborhood of Hampstead is just at present exercised with a series of events which seem to run on lines parallel to those of what was known to the writers of headlines as the Kensington Horror, or the Stabbing Woman, or the Woman in Black. During the past 2 or 3 days, several cases have occurred of young children straying from home or neglecting to return from their playing on the heath. In all these cases, the children were too young to give any properly intelligible account of themselves, but the consensus of their excuses is that they have been with a bloofer lady. It has always been late in the evening when they have been missed, and on 2 occasions the children have not been found until early in the following morning. It is generally supposed in the neighborhood that, as the first child missed gave as his reason for being away that a bloofer lady had asked him to come for a walk, the others had picked up the phrase and used it as occasion served. This is the more natural, as the favorite game of the little ones at present is luring each other away by wiles. A correspondent writes us that to see some of the tiny tots pretending to be the blooper lady is supremely funny. Some of our caricaturists might, he says, take a lesson in the irony of grotesque by comparing the reality and the picture. It is only in accordance with general principles of human nature that the blooper lady should be the popular role in these al fresco performances. Our correspondent naively says that even Ellen Terry could not be so winningly attractive as some of these grubby-faced little children pretend and even imagine themselves to be. There is, however, possibly a serious side to the question. For some of the children, indeed, all who have been missed at night, have been slightly torn or wounded in the throat. The wounds seem such as might be made by a rat or a small dog, and although of not much importance individually, would tend to show that whatever animal inflicts them has a system or method of its own. The police of the division have been instructed to keep a sharp lookout for straying children, especially when very young, in and around Hampstead Heath, for any stray dog which may be about.
I'm doing my best.
The Westminster Gazette, 25 September, extra special. The Hampstead Horror, another child injured, the blooper lady. We have just received intelligence that another child missed last night was only discovered late in the morning under a furze bush at the Shooter's Hill side of Hampstead Heath, which is perhaps less frequented than the other parts. It has the same tiny wounds in the throat as has been noticed in other cases. It was terribly weak and looked quite emaciated. It too, when partially restored, had the common story to tell of being lured away by the blooper lady. All right. I have no idea what the word blooper means. I'm going to be looking that up in the annotated edition. But I think we can all guess that blooper lady is Lucy Westenra. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, and thank you very much for joining me today. Oh,
Without changes.
Yeah, 2 more chapters this week. Oh, it's really getting harder and harder not to go ahead. But I like this idea of reading together so we can figure it out together. And I don't have to stress myself out trying to not reveal anything that we haven't gotten to yet as a group. So it's good. But yeah, it's good that we're doing this together. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, that you are enjoying a wonderful, wonderful tea of your own or something else special. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye, friends. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Christina, the manager of the Pacific Beach Library, and thank you for joining me today for day 14 of our read-along together of Dracula by Bram Stoker. Today, I realized that I forgot to put my water into my tea, so it's just starting to steep. So we're going to talk a little bit about other things first while the tea steeps. In fact, actually, I'm going to start with something totally not related to our read aloud at all, but it's baseball postseason, and I really like baseball, so I'm just going to say, if anyone else is wearing your Padres shirt in support of our baseball players, let me know. I'd love to see your thing. I'm just going to show this off because I'm super proud. This is a shirt that I was actually given by a friend of mine who got this shirt back in 1984, because it says it's for the very first time the Padres went to the World Series. So, I've had this shirt for a long time, she's had it even longer, and so, happy to wear it again with pride as our Padres are in the postseason. They have lost the first 2 games, and it's a best-of-5 series, so let's hope they win tonight. If not, still an awesome season, and still something to be celebrated. So, let's talk a little bit about yesterday's chapter in Dracula. Let's see, yesterday we read chapter 13, and in that one, it was preceded by Lucy Westenra dying at the end of chapter 12. But with Dr. Van Helsing saying to Dr. Seward that it was not the end, but indeed just the beginning. And what's interesting about chapter 13 is that basically it starts out with them observing that her corpse looks so beautiful, and in fact she looks more healthy and more beautiful than she did when she was alive. Yeah, she is. Okay, let's see. So, there's just a few interesting things that happen here. Dr. Van Helsing tells Dr. Seward that he would like to conduct not an autopsy on Lucy, but to remove her head and her heart, basically after the viewing has occurred, but before she's buried. And Dr. Seward is just appalled that Dr. Van Helsing would like to mutilate her body in this way. And again, it's because Dr. Van Helsing is not telling Dr. Seward about his suspicion that Lucy's a vampire, that this is the way to stop her body from not being able to rest, living as an undead corpse, as a vampire. And so, Dr. Van Helsing is like, well, maybe there's something we can do instead of that. Instead of doing that, let's get her ready. Let's prepare her for her body in a very specific way. The way he disgusting.
and spacious
And
cabins
rental
across
tank.
the forest floor,
Blood is life.
which were always right. Thanks, Impa. It really is nothing. I'm just going to rule Forrest to say Link. As out of the loop as Link can be when it comes to gossip, I worry that he may have heard the rumors that... I suspect that... Always right. Thanks, Impa. It really is nothing. I'm just going to rule Forrest to say Link. As out of the loop as Link can be when it comes to gossip, I worry that he may have heard the rumors that my dad is planning to introduce me to my future husband. I do not... Hello, my darlings. I am the Glitter Fairy Bomber, your friendly neighborhood plainclothes-looking witch, here to remind you that it's time to get comfy, preferably out in nature, under a tree or something. I listened to the latest Witch Read Aloud. Today's episode is the nerdy video game fan fiction written by a friend of mine, entitled Princess Zelda's Birthday Party of Danger. Cruel Castletown had been excited and busy for the past few weeks, and with good reason. Princess Zelda's birthday celebration was fast approaching, and the king had spared no expense in making preparations. After all, this was no ordinary birthday party. Not only was Zelda a princess, which was obvious, but it was customary in Hyrule for a young girl to be regarded as a woman, beginning on her 16th birthday. On top of that, it was widely rumored that the king of Hyrule had a husband in mind for his daughter, and some even suspected that he would make the announcement at the celebration. Princess Zelda had heard all of these rumors, and it suffices to say she was not at all pleased. When she first heard of the rumors from one of her close friends a week ago, she confronted her father immediately. Now, her father, the king, was considered by many to be a clever man and a shrewd diplomat, but Princess Zelda could read him like an open book. And his lack of a satisfactory answer to these accusations made Zelda angrier than she had been in a long time. She had not spoken with her father since. As the early morning sun shone in through her tower window, and the noise from the castle town, as well as the morning bird songs, were just commencing, Princess Zelda was already up and dressed, but not in her normal extravagant dresses, befitting a princess of Hyrule. She was dressed as any girl that might be found. Her striking pale features and long, light brown hair were hardly complemented flatteringly by the dark brown garment. Her birthday was only a day away, so she was planning an unannounced trip. Impa, Zelda's caretaker and guardian since birth, who always seemed to have a sixth sense about such things, and this drove Princess Zelda absolutely mad sometimes, knocked on Zelda's door. Impa, I know that it is you. It is always you. Leave me alone. Princess Zelda did not know how Impa did it. It was as if Impa knew that Zelda was planning to rebel even before Zelda noticed the thought inside her head. I am not coming to stop you, Impa assured her through the locked door. I just want to talk. This both confused Princess Zelda and made her very happy at the same time. Her mind had been speedily pondering ways to escape from her room without Impa stopping her. Perhaps out the window with bedsheets tied together? But she was not coming up with anything satisfactory. Her window was very high up, so Impa's offer not to stop her was an unexpected yet welcome pleasure to the pointy elf ears. Yet it left her very suspicious. Princess Zelda opened her door and Impa calmly strode in, closing the door behind her. Impa, of the Chica, is dressed in her usual attire. A cloak fancy enough to befit the guardian of royalty, yet modest enough to be inconspicuous and blend in whenever Impa felt so inclined, which was often. While impossible to tell from looking, Zelda knew Impa's robe concealed light armor and more weapons than Zelda would like to get. While Zelda sworn Hector by occupation, her relationship with Zelda had become complex ever since Zelda had stopped seeing her father as being perfect, which was at about 9 years old. While Impa made it no secret that she was
Welcome back, I'm Christina, the manager of Pacific Beach Library. Thank you for joining me for day 12 of our read-along together of, ready, let's go for it, Dracula by Bram Stoker. And so, let's see,
despite her
today,
relatively
for
advanced
tea, I did decide to take the plunge and finish off that eviction, so today is the last of our Earl Grey Villa Cram. But I have fancy new systems to try tomorrow, so we'll spare the stones.
Zelda was never able to confirm the truth. Impa was squeaky clean, even after much Zelda investigation and spying. Impa looked at Zelda with one of those looks that let her know she was about to say something important. I do not know what you are planning to do, but there is something you need to know. Impa sat Zelda down on the corner of the bed, sat beside her in a chair, opened looked back into Zelda's eyes, and continued. Zelda, ever since you were younger, protecting me has been my life. Even though it has been peaceful these past 16 years, as it ever has been, if not more so, the price of keeping it that way is that you never get lazy or careless. But the way I have been keeping you safe is going to have to change.
So far,
I will always
as
be
of
here
right
for you,
before
but
we
there
went
comes
into
a time
today's reading, I
when
looked at
you
the
need to
poll
take
results.
responsibility
8
for your
people
own
had
safety.
voted that they wanted
I
us to
cannot keep
just
you
do the
safe
live
by
reading,
denying
so
you
that
the
we would
ability to
only
make
post
your own
readings Monday
choices.
through Thursday,
Take your own
and
risk
no one had
and
voted
live
for
your
the
own
option of
life.
having a tape
It is
reading
not
on
for
Friday.
you, and
So
for
I'm
your
just going to call it right
I
now.
cannot
I figure
help you if you need
we've
to
got our
find ways
decision.
to live your life.
So I'm just
And
going to
it's
go
better
ahead
if you
and
face whatever
after
may
this week,
come
I'm going to
as
just
a
do the
team,
readings Monday through
even
Thursday.
if it means doing
This
it on
week, I'm
your
going to do
terms.
one last Friday reading, and the reason is that it just works out with the
There is
timing
no
of the number
way
of chapters that we
Impa is
have.
going
That
to
if
use
we
reverse
reading this
psychology
Friday and then
trickery
only
on
Monday
me,
through Thursday
Zelda
for the
told
rest of the
herself.
readings, we will
Finally,
finish up
however,
on
Zelda told her.
Thursday,
There is
October
no way to stay
29th,
suspicious
which
of
means
Impa.
by
She is always
Halloween we
right.
will have the conclusion of our tale of Dragon.
It really is not.
And then we can make a
I'm
decision
just
if
trying
we
to
want
go
to
forth
maybe
to
have a
say
little party
as absolute as
either the following Monday or perhaps
I worry that you may have heard rumors that my dad is planning
so we'll figure that out later. But for now,
I
the
do not
decision's
know
been
how
made. We're
he
going to go
responds
ahead and
to
just do the
this
live
news.
streams, and
I
our
mean,
last live
he has
stream will
always
be
been a
this
good friend,
Friday.
and marriage
Our last
continues
Friday
to
live
be.
stream will be this
Not that
Friday,
I'm planning to
and then
go
we'll
through
keep
with
going
any of my
after that
father's
with
evil
just Monday
schemes.
through Thursday
The
readings
rumor in
together.
itself is
Alright,
the
so
problem.
let's talk a little bit about what
I could
happened in
deliver any
yesterday's
message if
chapter
you like,
of
but
Dracula.
no
Yesterday in
thank you,
chapter
Impa,
11,
Zelda
it was
replied. I
really
think not
good.
bothering to visit personally sends the wrong
It
message
started
in
out with
and of
Lucy with
itself.
Senra, talking
This
about
is
how
something I want to
fortunate she
do,
felt that all
and
these
I want
folks
to
were
do it
taking care of
alone.
her.
So
And
I would
then,
appreciate if you let me go, and if you give
Dr.
me a little
Van
privacy,
Helsing,
meaning no stealth time. If
was
anything
saying,
goes
you know,
wrong,
he
I
was
will
quite
just have to
smug
rely
because
on the
he
years
knew
of
that he had
training you
left
have
Lucy
given
with
me,
Senra
turning me into a
surrounded by
machine.
garlic blossoms, and
As
that there
I
was
said,
no
we
way
were
that
all
any
grown up now.
any
I
unwanted
cannot stop
visitors
you.
of the evacuate
Even your
sort
father
would be able to
needs to
enter her
return.
room.
I suspect that is
And
why
when he
he's so
arrives at
eager
the
to
house
marry
again,
you
he's
off.
quite happy. Neither
The thought
he
of a
nor Dr.
completely
Sue would stay the
independent
night because
Princess
Dr. Van
Zelda
Helsing was
running around
so
through the
confident
field
that
with
Lucy would
casting
be fine.
magic spells
And
and
when
knocking
they go
rocks
in there,
from
they run into
unsuspecting
Lucy's
travelers.
mother who says,
Terrifies
"Oh
me.
yes, she's sleeping like an
Zelda
angel.
smiled.
She's
This was
she's not
freedom
in
to
her
always
room.
tell
She's
herself
just
she
so
wanted,
calm."
and yet
He's like,
some
"Wow,
part
that's
of her
great."
missed
And
Impa
you know,
bossing
he's
her
like
around.
patting himself on the back,
No
I guess,
matter, she
because
told
of my
herself.
wonderful garlic.
Every stage
And
of
then
life
she
has
continues,
its
"Well,
advantages
you know,
and
it's
its
not all you.
disadvantages.
I also
The
helped
most
her.
important
I
thing
noticed
right
you had
now
these stinky
is that I
garlic
do not
flowers
have to
even
worry
on her.
about
I
how
pushed
Liz
them
is
off her, and I
doing. I
opened
can
the
go and
windows
see
and I
for
aired out the
myself.
room so she would get suffocated
Princess
by the
Zelda
garlic."
walked to her trunk and, opening it,
He didn't
removed
want
a
to say
small
anything
dagger
directly
from
to
her
her
belongings.
because he knows that
She
she
tucked it
Senra
hidden
has.
away in
You
a
know, she's
slit
in poor
in her
health
common
and she
dress.
needs a shop.
Leaving
But
Impa
of
in the
course,
room,
when he
she
goes
walked
in,
upstairs and started to
since
make her
he
way
has,
through
you
the
know,
forest.
lots of blood in his face,
Early
it actually
afternoon
takes
sun
him
shone
in.
through the
And
small
so
passage
he actually
through the dense
decides to
forest
give her
overlook.
a transfusion. So
Everything was
Dr. Van
simultaneously bursting with light, and yet
tried to
completely
revive
silent.
Lucy
Even the
Senra.
nearby brook seemed to babble
After that,
peacefully and quietly.
there's,
Its
you know,
sound
the
muffled by
doctor
every patch of
continues
dirt,
to watch
by
over
every
her to make
plant,
sure that
and
she
blocked
has
by
the
every
necessary
tree.
garlic.
Link,
He warns
after
her mother
bathing to minimize
specifically
any
that, you know,
smell
this is
that
part
might
of her
tip her
treatment.
story off
Even if
to
it
a
stinks a
hunter,
little bit, you need to
had
keep it
covered
there.
himself in
And
dirt and sap,
Lucy is
completely
actually
losing.
really pleased. She's saying
If
how
an animal was lucky enough
so
to have
well.
moments to smell
She is,
Link would
you know,
smell as much
she's
like a
finally
forest
gotten
plant
used to
as he
smelling
could
garlic. She's so happy.
Link,
She's so
no
healthy.
more than
She's
15
so
years
grateful
old,
for Dr.
but there was no way that
kind
he could be sure of
character.
that. Had seen
And
his
then,
fair share of things
so
in
that was
life.
on the night of the
Good with
17th
a
of
sword,
September.
he had never
What's
met his
interesting
match
after
in
that
fight.
is that there is
Being
a
thin is not incredibly strong. His strength
snippet
came
next
from his
from the
agility and
Council
courage.
Gazette, which is a
Many
newspaper
competed sword
where
players
the
later
reporter
commented that
talks
Link
with
had no fear.
his
His dirty blonde,
Now, I'm also going to
long
throw in here,
hair
too, a
stopped
little bit of
just
just
short
my
of his
own
shoulders.
commentary. I did
And
not
he
understand.
usually
Maybe
stayed out
that's how they
of
used
his
to do
intense
news
green
reports
eyes.
back in the late
Link moved
1800s.
quietly,
But I cannot believe
being
there was
invisible
any news
was a
report
matter of
with caption
preparation,
printing in the dialect
relaxation,
of this
and intelligence. And he knew instinctively in years of practice.
as many quotes as he's
He
giving this
silently
man
walked in an
about
upward direction.
about the jokes he tells and about the bribery that he's taking
Before Link
to
could
speak
sight
with the
any
reporter
deer,
and all this kind of stuff.
he
Like, if
heard a
that's
man
actually the news
and he got as low to the ground as
I just
possible,
read more
still
news
making
reports
no
from the
noise.
1890s because this
With
stuff is
every
fun.
motion, he was even more peaceful and relaxed.
But perhaps, as a note,
Battling softly
in this book, though, with the report from Vital Montgomery, it has this wonderful account of the zookeeper talking about he has there this strange man, Dracula, who pets the yesteryears, and kind of weirds out the zookeeper, but the wolf is okay with it. And then the wolf,
One of the reasons
much
why
howling that night, the
ideal
wolf eventually comes back
to
and
sneak up on
the
Princess
ship,
Zelda
and they see that
light
the wolf has
However, the downside is that his dirt
on
and
his
back
head because he
regimen
appears to
left him
have, like,
feeling
gone
somewhat
through, like,
lacking in
somehow
confidence, but he was looking presentable, even by
and
his
so the zookeeper takes back the wolf,
He removed the cloth from
and,
his
the
tunic and
reporter
wiped his face and
celebrates
neck
that the community need not be afraid any longer that the
unstrung his
wolf
bow
is proud.
and secured it to his back.
Then,
and
go
he
back,
covered his
so that's
quiver
published on the
of
18th.
Feeling as
Well, we find out that in going back to the 17th, Dr.
himself,
Stewart
he
mentions
decided to
how
climb a nearby
he is
tree.
grateful not
As
to
the
have to
tree
go to
was
visit
not
Lucy
as
Westenra's
extremely
house that
lean,
night. He's
he
very
could
tired.
almost walk up the sloping
He
trunk
is,
until he could look
given
down
blood
and
and
to
watched
Zelda
over her.
and
He's
love.
tired. Also,
As if
that
in
evening,
honor
his
of her
strange
presence,
patient,
the
Renfield,
forest seemed
comes
to
in
lighten up
and stabs
all
him
around
or
him.
strikes him.
Colorful butterflies
Causes
shone
blood
in
to
rays of
drip from
sunlight
Dr.
coming
Stewart's
from
wrist
above,
onto the ground.
and even the nearby
He
dragonflies
bandages up
seemed
his
to
wrist,
take on
and
a
when he looks
jollier
down, he
attitude.
sees Renfield lapping
Perhaps
up
part
the
of it
blood
was that
like an
Princess
animal.
Zelda
Oh,
seemed to choose
get out of
the
the
more
ground.
open
Disgusting.
and spacious paths
And Renfield
across the
saying,
forest floor,
blood is life,
which were, of
the
course,
blood is
somewhat
life.
lighter compared to Link skulking through the shadows of Grand
Continues then with an
Where he could
account
be most.
of Dr.
Well,
Stewart
Link
noting
was
that
clearly aware
there
of the
had been
happiness that
a
seeing
telegram
Princess Zelda
delivered
gave
from
him.
Dr. Van
He
Helsing to him,
regarded such
which was
strong
not
emotions
properly
as more of a
directed.
hindrance
It
than
didn't
helpful.
live with the county in
Of
which it
all
was
the
to be
people
delivered,
in
and so
that
therefore
role
the
or
telegram
business travels,
came 2 hours
only
late.
Princess
So,
Zelda
being
seemed
a day
ever
late,
be more
Dr.
distinctive.
Stewart had not realized he
As
was
if
meant to
only
watch
she
her
could
see that night
understand
at
why
7
he lived such
so
a
she had been
solitary
let
life
that
in the
morning.
forest. He was not like other people
Again,
in
Dr.
here,
Stewart,
just like Zelda was not
terrible,
Isaac.
terrible
In a
thing.
way,
He
they
might be a
both
good
always
doctor.
went along,
He is
and they would
the
go on
worst
continuing to be
babysitter.
alone forever.
Terrible.
Because of this, Link
Okay,
knew,
that's it.
staying friends with Princess Zelda
He rushes
would
then
honor
over
him
to
most.
visit
Even
to
if it
check
meant
on
bowing
Lucy
out
Westenra.
gracefully
And
should
he's saying
Zelda
that he's
ever
worried
choose
about
a
having
husband
received
that
his telegram.
did not happen to be
He's
him.
worried about
Despite
receiving
being a
the
bit of a
telegram,
hermit,
and
Link
so
knew
he
enough
is,
about people to know that things
he's going to
could
continue
happen when
his
feelings of love were expressed
his journal
hastily
entry
and
once he gets to
went
Lucy. The next
Link
thing we
was
see,
no
the
coward,
last thing we
but
see in that
neither was he
chapter
eager
is
to
actually
risk
the
everything.
journal entry
He
from
had
Lucy
Princess
Westenra
Zelda
herself.
keep her
She
entirely to
writes
himself.
a note saying how basically
Zelda
she is sure that
just
she
like
is
the
weak and that
Empress
she's
seemed to
dying
have
and
a
that she
sixth
may
sense
not
of
even make
knowing
it to
what
morning.
Zelda was going
And
to
that
do
she is
before
very
she did
disturbed
it.
because even though
Zelda
she
was
was
starting to
sleeping so
develop a sixth
soundly,
sense about when
and
Link
so
was
without
going to
fear,
surprise her with one of the sneak attacks.
she has woken up to
Resisting
hear
the
again
urge
the
to call out
sounds
his
of
name
like
and
a
possibly
bat or
attract
something
forest
flapping
bandits
outside
and
of the
mobbing
window,
the
bat
town.
or black and
Zelda instead chose to act as
and
inconspicuous
she's
as
quite
possible.
disturbed and she's
As
trying
if she
to
did
rest.
not
She looks
sense
out the window,
Link's
she sees
presence.
nothing but a big bat.
If Link was planning a
then
surprise attack, she would just have to let him, she
her mother
supposed.
comes in to see her,
Part
her
of
very
her
own
felt a
mother.
surge of
And the
pride.
mother comes in
I will
and
just have
decides to
to
lie
act
in the bed
his
with
child.
Lucy.
If
She's
you
also
have to,
disturbed by
because
this
I
noise
know what is
flapping
coming.
outside of Lucy tries
Poor
to
Link,
disturb her.
he managed to surprise me so many other times.
Suddenly,
But
the
not this
window
time.
smashes apart when a wolf,
He casually glanced in every direction, then peeked above.
rushes in, breaks the glass, and the mother is so disturbed she thinks that
She walked deeper into the forest
the garlic
and began to
pepper
explore.
to read off.
Okay, I was wrong about Link sneaking up on me, or I am right.
It all just goes
Waited
down.
long enough.
The mother ends up passing
I
out
hate
from
her
the
so
shock.
much
She dies. Lucy is,
just as she had
gets
given up
confused by what's
and
happening.
convinced
Like,
herself that
presumed
she was
that
imagining
Dracula
things. Link dropped as fast as lightning from above, and somehow
The mother
found
dies.
himself.
The maids
Princess
come in
Zelda
because they
jumped
hear the
her shot,
noise.
and Link grinned ear to
And
ear.
they're all disturbed by
I
what's
got
going
her, he
on.
thought to himself.
They
Despite the
they
intense
send
physical
she sends the
training
maids
and
down to the
improv
deck.
that
They each have a glass of wine.
even she was amazed by Link's seemingly reckless fall.
Finding the mother there.
Very judging by his speed, he must have been falling from at least as high as the towering bedroom window, Zelda observed himself. As the shock from Zelda's fright should have been wearing off, Princess Zelda was not beginning to drop as quickly as she expected. Looking at Link, she suddenly realized that part of her was more scared while she became married than previously admitted to
alone in the
herself.
house. The servants are passed
What if
out.
her father and this mysterious
dead
suitor
mother
were not planning on taking no for an
feels
answer?
tired, so again, Jack
Am I prepared to be disowned and locked in a dungeon on account
and
of my
she is
marriage
just
preferences?
thoroughly disturbed.
Or
She is
would I
afraid
compromise
that
and
she's
become all the things that I
She writes
hate
notes
when
I'm
it
going to
comes
hide
to
the paper
On
on my
top of
breast
that,
so that when they
the
find
idea
it,
that Zelda
when they
might be
come,
losing
when they
Link
find my body,
made
they
her
find
see
it
him in a
as well.
different light
And she
than
just
she had
isn't
in
sure if
her
he's going to make it to the point.
To
So,
her, being with Link has always made Zelda more
okay,
free
now
to
we're
be
going to
her true
continue
self.
with chapter 12,
Out here in the
which begins
forest,
with
no one ever
Dr.
expected
Stewart's
her to
diary.
keep a straight face, be rigidly dignified, and regal all the time.
For those
She
who
could
have
even
not
tell
read it,
jokes if she felt so inclined.
comment now.
Not that
Decide yourself.
frequently
Do you
she
think Lucy
speaks
made it
such
tonight, or will she be dead by the time they come?
But as Zelda would be able to realize, it was more than that. Being with Link was not merely a passport with superficial
voting for
displays
Squill
of
barely
maturity
alive,
and
but
loyalty. It was more than just permission to be free
What's your
from
comment if you think?
responsibility.
Right, what's your thoughts? All right, let's go in and find out.
The person she
Chapter
wanted
12, Dr. Stewart's
person
diary.
who
September.
not only was
I
more
drove
than
once
just
to
a
Hillingham
sporting
and
career,
arrived
but
early.
bigger.
Keeping my cab at the gate, I went up the avenue alone. I knocked gently and rang as quietly as possible, for I feared to disturb Lucy or her mother, and hoped to only bring a servant to the door. After a while, finding no response, I knocked and rang again.
Political compromise, they forgot to put the
I cursed at the laziness of the servants that they should lie in bed at such an hour, for it was now 10 o'clock, and so rang and knocked again, but more impatiently, but still without response.
And up until recently,
Hitherto I had
neither
waited
of them
for
had
the
ever
servants,
happened.
but now a terrible
But
fear
after a
began
few
to assail
moments,
me.
Link
Was
suspected
this
something
desolation
troubling
but
her.
another link in the
As if
chain of
sensing that
feud
he
which
knew,
seems drawing
Zelda
tight round
decided to
us?
speak first. Link,
Was it indeed a house of death to which I had come too
there's
late?
someone else in there. Link's smile faded, and he looked down.
I know that
gathering his
minutes,
thoughts.
even seconds of delay might
did
make
not know
hours
what
of
to say.
danger to Lucy
As
if
sudden
she
as
had had
he'd seen
again one
moments
of those
ago
frightful
that he would bow out of
relapses.
Zelda's
And I
life,
went round the house to try if I could
he
find
somehow
by
could
chance
not
entry
or would
anywhere.
not bring
I
himself
could
to
find
say
no
that
means of
to her.
egress. Every window and door was
Instead,
fastened
looking up,
and locked, and I returned back to the
usually
porch.
indecisive.
As I did so,
took her
I heard the
hand
rapid
and left her
hit-pat
to
of
force.
swiftly driven horses'
Where are we going,
They
sir?
stopped the
Am I
gate.
being kidnapped?
Seconds later, I met
Zelda
Van
asked
Helsing
her.
running up the avenue.
But the song
When
that
he saw me,
accompanied the
he
topic,
gasped
that
out,
she herself
"Then it was
brought up
you,
moments
and just
before,
arrived.
could not be
How is she?
dispelled with
Are we
broken
too
words.
late?
And
Did
she
you
knew it.
not get my telegram?"
Link led her, winding down a steep hill.
I answered as quickly and sincerely as I could that I had only gotten his telegram early in the morning and had not lost a minute in coming here, and that I could not make anyone in the house hear me. He paused and raised his
But
hat
it
and
was
said
not the
solemnly,
conversation topic.
"Then I fear we are too late.
The area itself
God's
was
will be
somehow
done."
different.
With his
But
usual
Princess Zelda
recuperative
did not
energy,
tell
he went
why.
on, "Come,
Then suddenly,
if
she
there
got
be no way
frustrated.
open to get in, we
As
must
Link
make
pressed
one.
aside a wall
Time
in
is
front,
all in all
Zelda
to
saw
us
past the
now."
opening what
We went
appeared
round
to
to
be
the back
a
of the house
massive
where there was a
doorway
kitchen window.
in the side of
The
floor.
professor took a small
Made of
surgical
stone
saw from
shaped
his
with
case
giant
and handing it to me,
lion's head.
pointed to the
His
iron
mouth
bars
was
which guarded the
gaping
window.
open as he
I
went.
attacked them at once and
Made
very
of dark
soon
green
cut
stone that
three of
Zelda
them.
did not recognize.
Then with a long,
But
big
knew
knife, we pushed back the fastenings of the sashes and
The
opened the
doorway
window.
was almost
I
like a
helped the
world
professor in and followed him.
Finally,
There was
Zelda
no one
remembered.
in the kitchen or the
That is
servant
what it
room,
was.
which was close at hand.
This is the doorway
We tried
to the
all the
other
rooms
world,
as we
isn't
went
it?
along,
Zelda
and in the
asked.
dining room,
Long
dimly
ago,
lit by
when
rays
our
of light through the
ancestors
shutters,
engaged in
found
war and
four
famine,
servant women
these
lying
ancient
on the floor.
underground labyrinths were used to
There was
hide
no need to
fragments
think
of the
them dead,
triforce of
for their
wisdom.
sulphurous breathing and the
How
active
or
smell
why
of
they were
laudanum in
built
the room
originally,
left
no
no
one
doubt
really
as to their
knows.
condition.
Zelda
Van
remembered
Helsing
the
and I looked
legends.
at each other, and as we moved away, he said,
If Ganon
"We
had
can
managed to
attend
get a
to them
hold
later."
of both the
Then he
triforce of
ascended
power
to Lucy's
and
room.
wisdom,
For
he
an
would have been
instant or two,
unstoppable.
he paused at the door to
Later,
listen,
when Ganon was
but there was
defeated
no
by a
sound
hero
to hear.
wielding a magical
With white
sword and
faces
silver
and
arrows,
trembling hands,
and Ganon's
he
spirit
opened the
was
door
sealed
gently
forever in the
and
Temple of
entered.
Time, peace returned forth, and the
How shall I
monsters that used to
describe
fill
what we
these
saw?
dungeons disappeared.
On the bed
Or so
lay
they
two
said.
women,
You probably never
and her
pictured her
mother.
before because
The
you
latter
detested
lay
them.
farthest in,
As Link
and
and
she was
Zelda grew
covered
up,
with a white sheet,
their fear of
the edge of
monsters
which had
gradually
been blown
faded.
back by the
Now,
drop
they
through the
merely had
broken
a
window,
healthy respect for
showing
the
the
dangers
drawn
of the
white
forest
faces
presented.
with a look of terror
Despite the
fixed upon
possibilities
it.
that monsters
By her side
may
lay
still lurk
Lucy,
in such a
with
place,
face white and
Lincoln
still
Zelda
more
knew
than
that
ever.
it was unlikely
The flowers
that
which had
they
been
would
round her
eat
neck
anything
found
that the two
upon
of
her
them
mother's
could not
bosom,
handle.
and her throat was
So why
bare,
did you bring me here?
showing the
Zelda
two
asked.
little wounds that she
Link
had
was not
noticed
sure about
before,
herself.
but looking
His mind
horribly white
introspectively
and mangled.
brainstormed
Without a word, the professor bent over the bed, his head almost touching poor Lucy's breast. Then he gave a quick turn of his head as the one who listened, and leaping to his feet, he cried out to me, "It is not yet too late. Quick, quick, bring the brandy." I flew downstairs and returned with it, taking care to smell and taste it, lest it too were drugged like the decanter of sherry which I found on the table. The maids were still breathing, but more restlessly, and I fancied that the narcotic was wearing off. I did not stay to make sure, but returned to Van Helsing. He rubbed the brandy, as on another occasion, on her lips and gums, and on her wrists and the palms of her hands. He said to me, "I can do this. All that could be is ultimately death. You go wake those maids. Flick them in the face with a wet towel and flick them hard. Make them get heat and fire and a warm bath." This poor soul is nearly as cold as that beside her. She will be heated before we can do anything more. I went at once and found little difficulty in making real women. The poor was only a young girl, the drug had evidently affected her strong. So I lifted her arms to the home and let her sleep. The others were dazed and hurt, but his remembrance came back to them. They cried and sobbed in hysterical manner. I was stern with them, however, and would not let them drop. I told them that one life was bad enough to lose, and that if they delayed, they would sacrifice it. So, sobbing and crying, they went about their way, half clad as they were, and prepared fire and water. Fortunately, the kitchen and boiler fires were still on, and there was no lack of hot water. We got a bath and carried Lucy out as she was placed in the park. And carried Lucy out as she was, and placed her in it. While we were busy chafing her limbs, there was a knock at the back door. One of the maids ran off, hurried off to her clothes, and opened it. Then she returned and whispered to us that there was a gentleman who had come with a message from Mr. Holmwood. I bade her simply tell him to come and wait, for we could see no one now. She went away with the message, and
I will tell everyone that I do not want to get married, unless it is to you.
I never saw in all my experience the professor's work with such deadly earnest. I knew, as he knew, that it would stand up by his death, and in a pause told himself. He answered me in a way that I did not understand, but with the sternest look in his face could wear. If that were all, I would stop here where we are now, and let her fade away to peace. For I see no light in life over the horizon. He went on with his work with, if possible, renewed and more frenzied vigor.
He had beaten his son in the race to get up
Presently we both began to be conscious that the heat was beginning to be of some effect. Lucy's heart beat pressing more audibly to the stethoscope, and her lungs had a perceptible movement. Van Helsing's face almost beamed, and as we lifted her from the bath and rolled her in a hot sheet to dry her, he said to me, "The first game is ours." Check.
To memorize the face you just made. He would be making it all day, at least with his eyes and his mouth, smiles,
and laid her bed and poured a few drops of brandy down her
as a
throat.
king,
I noticed that Van Helsing tied a soft silk
his people
handkerchief
could
round
not
her
afford
neck.
for him to be
She was
weak.
still
He
unconscious,
did not get
and
any
quite as bad as, if not
He
worse
didn't
than,
have to be
we
strong
had ever
with
seen
matters
her.
relating to his beloved
Van
daughter.
Helsing called in
He
one
knew
of
the
the
way
women
men
and
were,
told her to
and
stay
he knew
with
the
her
types of men
and
who
not
would
to
want to
take her
marry
eyes
Princess
off her
Zelda.
till we returned,
The wealth,
and then
the
beckoned
power.
me out of the room.
If he did not choose a husband for
We
his
must
daughter,
consult
the
with
other men
what
of the
is
world would
done,
essentially
he said
choose
to me,
for her,
descended the stairs.
and that would be
In the
disastrous.
hall, he opened the dining
Zelda
room
had
door,
a chance
and
of
passed in.
happiness,
He
and for his
closed the
people
door
to have a
carefully
stable
behind
future.
him. The shutters had been opened, but the blinds were
Someone
already
that can be
down.
trusted.
With that obedience to the
sun,
exit of
finally
death, which
catching
the
up
British
to him,
woman with the
prepared
leather
to
glasses
rise.
always
The dim
rigidly
light of dawn
observes.
crept through the
The
window.
room was therefore
His
dimly
red
dark.
candle lessened
It
its
was,
shade.
however, light
He blew it
enough for
out.
our purposes.
He looked again at the
Van
mirror.
Helsing's
His
sternness
beard
was
had
somewhat
seemed to
relieved
gray
by a
in the
look of
night.
perplexity.
He may not be
He was
fooled
evidently
if he
torturing his
could
mind
not
on
look out for
something, so I
Zelda
waited for
forever.
an instant. Then he
Besides,
spoke.
no matter who Zelda
What
had
are
on
we
his
to do
own,
now?
he could not
Where
be
are
better
we to
than
turn for
Harper.
help? We must have
No
another
soldier had
country
ever
with
risen in the
blood,
ranks.
and that
Full guard,
or
faster
that
than
poor,
Harper.
poor
The
girl's
king had
life
met
would
him
be
on
worth
many
an hour's
occasions
purchase.
and felt he was a man of
You
good
are
courage,
exhausted already.
and he was
I
of
am
good birth.
exhausted too.
Of all
I
the
fear
men
to
the king
trust those
considered
women,
worthy of
even
Princess
if they would
Zelda,
have courage to
none
submit.
came close to
What are we
Harper.
to do for someone who will
He
open
was
his
the most
veins for
impressive
us?
man the king had ever met.
What's the matter with me,
The
anyhow?
king knew of Zelda's
The
friendship
voice
with
came from
Forest
the
boy
sofa
Link,
across the room,
and he had
and its
met Link
tones
on
brought
several
relief and
occasions,
joy to my
if
heart,
only to be
for
kept
they were
aware
those
of his
who
daughter's
came before us.
activities.
Van Helsing started
had nothing
immediately at the
against
first sound.
But the
With
idea
his
of
face softened and a glad look
someone
came into his
like
eyes as I
Link
cried out,
seemed impossible.
"Quincy Morris!" and
Link
rushed
was an
towards him with
unmannered person.
outstretched hands. What
The king
brought
had
you
nothing
here?
against
I
it.
cried as our
But the idea of
captain
the princess
I
marrying
guess
someone
art
at
is
point
impossible.
seemed
He
impossible.
handed me a telegram.
Wink was an
Have not heard
unmarried
from
hermit.
Seward for 3 days.
Come to think of
and
it,
am
the
terribly
king had never
anxious.
even heard him
And
speak.
I'm
No,
father's
the
still
king
in the
told
same
himself,
condition.
I am doing
Send
the right
me like
thing.
how Lucy is. Do
After
not
dressing in
delay.
one of his fire robes, donning his stately crown, the king proceeded to the dining room.
I think I came just in the
Ready,
nick
but
of time.
Princess Zelda
You
was
know
late.
you have only to
She
tell me
often
what to
was,
do.
especially on special
Van Helsing
occasions.
strode forward and took his
The king
hand,
sat down
looking
and
him
folded
straight in
his
the
napkin
eyes,
and
and
placed
said,
it in his lap.
"A brave
He
man's
started
blood
eating his
is the
toast.
best thing on this
After his
earth
toast was
for a
gone,
woman.
he started with his eggs.
You're a
Zelda
man
arrived.
and no mistake.
In a much better mood
Well,
than
the
he
devil
expected.
may work against us
He was
for all
wearing
his
one of
words,
the finest
but
white
God
dresses.
sends us
It
men
was
who we
extravagantly
want them."
arranged. Parsley
Once
pinned
again,
up
we
and
went
bond
through
his
that
back.
ghastly operation.
Seeing
I have
Zelda
not the heart to go through with the details. Lucy had got a terrible shock, and its hold on her more than before. For though plenty of blood went into her veins, her body did not respond to the
They
treatment
talk
as
about
well as on
nothing
the other
and
occasions.
everything.
Her
Ate their
struggle
breakfast
back to
with
his
his
life
dad.
was something frightful to see and hear.
This cordial,
However, the
friendly
action of
mood
postmarks
continued
along
as
the
the guests
cruise,
started arriving
and Van
for their
Helsing made a
private reception.
subcutaneous injection of
Relatives and
morphia
friends from
and
near and
cold,
far
and with
came
good
to pay their
effect.
respects
Her
to
face
Zelda
became a
on
profound
Christmas Day.
slumber. The
But what
professor
was
walked
unexpected
went
was
downstairs to
unexpected.
Quincy Morris and
He
sent
was
one of the
dressed in
maids
a
to
white
pay off one of the
silk
cab fares
shirt
who were waiting.
with an unbuttoned
I
stand-up
left
collar
Quincy lying
and a
down
gray
after having a
jacket
glass of
with
wine and told the
cashmere.
cook to get ready
His
for
shoes were
breakfast.
shining black leather.
Then a thought struck
He
me,
even had
and I
gotten
went
his
back
hair
to
cut.
the room where
While
Lucy
his
now
dirty
was.
blonde hair was long,
When I came
it was no
softly
longer
in, I found
flying
Van Helsing with a sheet or two of notepaper in his
He did not
hand.
know who
He
he
had
was.
evidently read it
Then
and was
Princess
thinking
Zelda
it over as he
flashed
sat with his hand
smile,
to his
so
brow.
she recognized him.
There was a
To
look of
her,
grim
he looked
satisfaction in
utterly
his face,
ridiculous.
as it was to his hand as out.
Standing there off
He
with his
handed me the
hair
paper
flying
saying
clothes for the
only,
first time in his
"It
life.
dropped from
However,
Lucy's breath
she could
when we
tell
carried
that
him
to everyone
back."
else, he looked
When I
perfectly
had
fine
read
for the
it, I
occasion.
stood looking at the
She
professor,
rushed to him
and
and
after a
gave him a
pause,
hug,
asked him,
sparking the curiosity of
"God's
everyone
name,
present,
what
including
does it all mean?
Who is that?
Was
the
she,
king asked a
or
bystander.
is she mad?
Walking over to
Or
greet
what
the new
sort of
guest,
horrible
the king
danger
took his
is it?"
hand and asked who he was.
I was so
Dad,
bewildered
do
that
not
I
be
did not
silly.
know what to
You
say
know
more.
me. Zelda
Van
interjected.
Helsing put out his hand and
The
took
king
the
did a
paper,
small
saying,
double.
"Do not trouble
I could
about
not
it now.
recognize you looking
Forget
like
it,
that.
Professor.
Well, what a
You
pleasant
shall know
surprise
and
to see you
understand
here.
it all in good
The king
time.
was perfectly
But
polite.
it will be later."
All of Zelda's
And now, what is it that
Secretly
you
Zelda
came to me
knew
to
the
say?
king was concerned.
This brought me back
This
to
news
fact, and I
was
will
very
myself again.
kind for Zelda.
I came to speak about the certificate of death.
It was time for
If
the
we do
king
not
and
act
Zelda
properly
to
and
make their
wisely,
first public appearance.
there may be an
The room they were
inquest,
using
and
had
that
balcony
paper would have to be
cottage, which was
I
where
am
the
in
main
hopes
party
that we
was
need
taking
have no
place.
inquest, for
And
if
had
you
been
had,
at
it
first
would
stage
surely
some
kill
time
poor
ago.
Lucy,
The
if
market
nothing
place
else
was
did.
packed with people,
I
all
know,
the
and
full
you know, and the
Many
other doctor who
cases,
attended her
many new
knows
ones.
that Mrs.
All
December
having
had
fun
disease of
times.
the heart,
There were
and we can
games,
certify that she died
contests,
of it.
puppet shows,
Let
and
us
high
know the
school
certificate at once, and I shall take it
Lots of
myself to the registrar and
Even
go on to the
soldiers were on
undertaking.
hand to keep an eye on everyone.
Good, oh my
As the
friend.
king, Simba,
Well
and
thought.
Princess Zelda
Truly,
made their way
Miss
towards the
Lucy, if she'd
balcony,
be sad and
it was
opposed to
then
beset her,
she
is
saw
at
the
least
king
happy
first
in
greet
the
the
friends
husband.
of
And she
One,
instantly
two,
suspected
three,
he was the mystery man
all
her
open
father
their
had in
veins
mind.
for her, besides one
Wearing his
old
full
man.
dress uniform,
Ah,
he
yes, I
certainly
know.
looked impressive.
French dog.
With his
I
long
am
black
not
hair
blind.
tied in short
I
ponytail
love you all the
behind his
more
head.
for it.
A
Now,
neat goatee resting on his
in the
long,
hall, I met Quincy Morris with a telegram to Arthur telling him that Mrs. Westenra was dead, that Lucy also had been ill but was now
She beckoned
going on
to him to
better,
follow her.
and that Van Helsing and I
Arthur
were
felt
with
guilty
I
using
told him
late
where I
as
was
a sort
going,
of marriage
and he
shield.
hurried me out.
But
But as I was going,
Arthur
said,
any other
"When you
ideas
come
to get
back,
her out
Jack,
of
may I have
predicament.
2 words to
She
keep all
ignored
to
her guilt.
ourselves?" I
As
nodded
they
in
stepped
reply
out
and
onto the
went out.
balcony, the
I
people
found no
below cheered.
difficulty about the
Zelda
registration and
smiled
arranged
and
for the
waved
local
and cheered
undertaker to
louder.
come up in the
She
evening
took
to
Prince's
measure for
arm
the
and
coffin
held it
and to
close,
make arrangements.
clinging to him with a grip like
When
a
I got
vice.
back, Quincy
I am
was
not
sleeping.
going to stand next to
I told
Parker.
him I would see him as soon as I knew about Lucy.
As was
I went up to her
customary,
room.
the king stepped
She was
forward
still
to speak,
sleeping, and the
and the
professor
noise
clearly
subsided.
had not moved from his seat at
Welcome
her
to the
side.
birthday party
From
of
his putting his
Princess
fingers to
Zelda.
his lips, I gathered that he expected her to wake
As you
over
all know,
and was afraid of her
as the
stalling.
noise subsided, she is turning
So I went
16
down to
today.
Quincy and took him into the breakfast
A bit
room
later,
where the blinds were
I have
not
an
drawn
important
down,
announcement
which was a little
concerning
more
her
cheerful,
that I'm sure
and
many
rather
of you
less
have been
cheerless
expecting.
than the
They
other
cheered
rooms.
again.
When we
Princess
were
Zelda
alone,
gave a
said
smile.
to me,
It seemed
Jack
appropriate
Stewart,
to smile.
I don't want to
But it was
shove
a little
myself in
bit
anywhere where I have no right to be.
But in the
But
meantime,
this is no
it's time for
ordinary
the
case.
traditional fencing
You know
tournament.
I love that
As you
girl
all
and
know,
wanted to marry
today
her.
is not only
But
my daughter's
although that's all
birthday,
past
but it is
and
also
gone,
the
I can't help
anniversary of
feeling
sealing
anxious
Ghana,
about her all the
King of
same.
Evil. in the Temple
What
of
is it that's
Time.
wrong with her?
Zelda is
The
the last in a long line of descendants of
he
a
is,
woman
I can see
who,
that.
along with 6 other
Said that time
sages,
you
joined
two
their
came in
power
the
to
room,
seal
that
Ganon
you must
away
have
forever.
another transfusion of
crowd
blood, and that
definitely
both you
cheered
and
for
he
that
were
remark.
exhausted.
Well,
Now I know
many
well
of
that
you
you met
have never known war.
in camera,
You must
and that a
always
man
be
does not
ready,
expect
which
to
is
know
why
what
it is
they
important to
spoke
teach our
about
children swordplay
But this is no
and to
common
encourage
matter.
them to serve the
Whatever it
crown.
is, I have done
Let
my
the
part.
tournament begin.
Not that so.
The king
That's
turned to
so, I
Harkonnen.
said. And he
Would
went
you do
on.
me the honor
I
of
take
representing
it
the
that
royal
both you and
guard
Van
in the
Helsing
competition?
had done already
I've heard
what I
only
did
the best
today.
things about your
Not
talents
that
with the
so.
sword.
That's